It's time again for Type 40 Live's early edition with a live stream Doctor Who magazine show on Rumble, X, YouTube and Facebook, where we talk all things Doctor Who. From right the way back then to the right here and the right now, us and you, of course, in the live chat there, full of fellow friends, fans and companions. And Billie Piper, still the woman in the hot seat? Where's her head at? Let's ask her, let's find out. Billie boomed in the 90s, of course, originally, when Doctor Who was banished to VHS and cable TV. The two of those are lying this week coming to. We've got all the details about all of that. Plus, there's more little pretty bits of plastic. Great Scott, how do we do it? How do we keep up here on your Type 40 Live? All that excitement, let's relax in the TARDIS library if we can get there. It's low on seating, but plenty of shelving. Lots to pick our way through. Food for the mind, food for the soul with us here on Type 40 Live and me, Dan Hadley, Birmingham's King of the Geeks. Does my soul seem particularly nourished? Let me know. I can't remember the last time I sat down and read a book from cover to cover. That's a little later on, but yeah, there's lots to see here. Of course, in the Capaldi TARDIS, up in the rafters, and I like the fact there's a skull and various other bits and pieces there. And we have an assortment of great accessories to all our nonsense to bring on to the panel in a moment. And you can chip in too on YouTube, Rumble, Facebook and X with comments about everything that we're going to talk about on this edition of the show. As ever, can't wait to get cracking. We'll find out who you are, what's on your mind in due course. September, yeah, it's up, it's running, and it does seem a bit strange. I always find it strange at this time of year when Doctor Who itself isn't on, but we can reach into the expanded media for our fix at least. The only problem I find is that when I go back to my shelves and my boxes, because I do have far too many of these things, I tend to forget which books I've got and which ones I haven't. Anthony, do you have that problem as well?
Oh my goodness, Dan. Good evening, everybody. How you doing? I think I've amassed so many Doctor Who books over the years. Honestly, I need to have a bit of a cull on the bookshelves, Dan. I mean, seriously, in preparation for this particular show, I was going back through the archive of books, you know, Peter Haining books, Key to Time book by Peter Haining, The Celebration by Peter Haining. These are vintage books around the time of what we're going to be talking about this evening. So it's nice to reminisce looking back at, you know, remember the early years book by Jeremy Bentham.
Yeah.
You know, sort of like a seminal piece of Doctor Who writing, you know, when Doctor Who books were produced, you know, by W.H. Allen. We started to look back on ourselves. So books like the early years, and do you remember, Dan, the book called the 60s, the 70s and the 80s, those kind of decade anthology books by David Howe et al. Were incredible. And it was the first time really we were starting to unpick, I say they were unpicking kind of the history of Doctor Who and the kind of the backstory to Doctor Who, and where we end up now today with the Blu-ray collection box sets, are kind of an amassing of all of that information that was starting in this bookshelf. That, as you said,
a lot of those books were slim volumes by a lot of standards now when you look back at them, but so many fond memories. I'm just aware, I'm becoming increasingly aware how seldom I open some of them when I've got to the point where I can't remember, have I still got this one or that one or the other? And I think, well, should I declutter? Should I move some of these items on whilst there are other people still wish to read them? But I always have that niggling feeling that I may regret it.
Yeah, I agree, Dan. And actually, when you started talking about, you know, as we're going on to, when I started looking back through some books that I have on my shelf, you know, it's quite nice to look back through Jeremy's book about the early years, because at that point, you know, black and white photographs, set photographs, you know, production designs and drawings we hadn't seen before. So it's actually quite nice to reminisce. So I think I'll be holding on to my copies of those books until the moment I pass from this world, because they've been with me for the last, I don't know, 30 odd years, Dan. I'm sure they'll be with me, I hope, for another 30, and then I'll be ready to pass them on. But
I think they'll be I think that could see like a Valley of the Kings equivalent for Doctor Who fans, where we are all laid to eternal rest in giant pyramids, surrounded by an assortment of target books, character options, figures, and palette figures, and anything else. Tom Baker underpants, all that kind of thing. I mean, my copy of Doctor Who: The Early Years is falling apart at the seams. Anthony, I read it and looked at every design drawing. It really is in a terrible state.
Oh my goodness, Dan, I love it when we talk about old Doctor Who, but I suppose we need to talk about new Doctor Who and bring some other people on. But I could talk to you about old Doctor Who and old copies of the Doctor Who monster book from 1976. Oh, good gracious.
Yeah, well,
how many copies?
Time and space.
How many copies
Time
of
and
that?
Space for it all.
And cut them up. You know, I used to cut them up and stick them somewhere else. Why didn't I keep them as a book? Age 5. Bonkers.
Put them in scrapbooks. I do wonder, did the fans that come along after us, did they do that as well? Luke, did you do that?
No. To be fair, I just went to Waterstones and bought Exterminate, Regenerate, the John Higgs new book on Gary Akers' recommendation, and he's poking and prodding me to hurry up and read it. But it takes me a while to get through books. But no, I'm a big H.G. Wells fan, as you know. And this week we're actually starting production on our final one, The Invisible Man. So that tied in quite nicely. Well done, Dan. Well done.
So you're a big reader, generally speaking, as well?
Not particularly, to be honest. If there's a film out, I'll watch it. Getting into it a bit more now. I'm a bit older, a bit wiser, and a bit bored of telly. So now I'm sitting down and reading the book. I've always been a H.G. Wells fan my entire life. But yeah, getting into it a little bit more now. A little bit more. Still haven't watched Thursday Movie Club or read it, actually. My missus has given me the book and she's been trying to get me to read it. And yeah, I'll just watch it when it comes out. So yeah,
I don't think we haven't got a copy here that I can see. Although there are copies, I recognise copies on the right, on the bottom of the late lamented music magazine Q, which I used to buy religiously, and I bet David Milling did as well.
Well, I was a poor student at the time. Hello, everybody. As in reflection of you getting to 250 not out, Dan, we've got to do the obligatory bat wave and the salute with the hat and the thank you very much.
What are you doing, man?
That's what you do when you get a significant score in cricket, isn't it?
So there you go, Luke. 13 seconds.
I used to love Q, used to love Enemy. To answer your question, I am wondering if they've got the wonderful Terry Nation Dalek special, of which I have 3 copies of. One is bashed to bits, and the other 2 are spares. Although I don't think I've got the outer cover of it. I've got the Doctor Who: The Early Years as well, Anthony, and sadly I don't have a copy of The Making of Doctor Who. From it's that 1973 book.
Who's on the cover? Who's on the cover, David?
John Pertwee and the Sea Devil, the Piccolo one. I've got the later edition with Tom Baker on the cover with the Chris Achilleos illustration. I've never had the original one either.
No, I've never had the original one either, despite looking at many places. And I love. I can't throw any Doctor Who book away. I can't. It's just sacrilege. It's got to be stored somewhere. It's got to be put in a plastic protective box or something for storage, because obviously my wife needs to have my wife needs to have space for her own books as well. So
if they insist on it, yeah.
If they insist, I've just got a pile over in the corner. She said, "Can you do something with those Doctor Who books?" And I went, "No, they're staying."
We all need sorting out, I think, and we can all be fools to ourselves over these inanimate objects. Are you any different, Charlotte Shields?
It depends. Weirdly, I'm more like fiction books. So I've read now quite a bit of Doctor Who stories, not the sort of, like you said, the going back through the production and that element. I think right now, actually, I'm reading Evil of the Daleks, the Target version, the new with the new
John
cover
Peel
they did.
one.
Yeah.
The John
So
Peel
that's-
version. Oh, that's a brilliant book. That is an amazing book.
And
Is
I'm like,
it the John Peel version or is it the Fraser Hines version from
it's
last
the Fraser
year? 'Cause
Hines
that's
version
what I
I'm
thought.
reading right now.
The John Peel. The John Peel one is excellent. It's like a novel.
So I'm enjoying that though, because like I said, and that's what I find about, even if it's whether it's a TV version of a book or a normal book, it's just how
Yeah.
Doctor Who is different when you can sort of you can explore more aspects narratively. You can go into the setting a bit more, or how a Dalek looks, like the way they described the Dalek the first time in Evil. It's interesting because it's not it's from a character that doesn't have a clue what it is. So it's sort of this abstract way they describe it, and I know what it is as a Doctor
Yes.
Who fan. But it's interesting to hear, like, from a layman's perspective, it's such an interesting thing for me to sort of read that.
It's part of the fun, I think, because sometimes they're written in the third person, aren't they? And so it's different people, different perspectives. And sometimes it's when the book itself was written as well, where they had license to kind of change the appearance of creatures like the Daleks ever so slightly, because it hadn't been on the TV for a little while or whatever. It's all part. I've forgotten about all that. And the little passages that were different too, because I don't really read those new ones, although I have got that Fraser Hines Evil. I've got several of the new ones, but I haven't opened them, to my shame.
It's interesting because it starts with Jamie talking in the future. So I know this is an adventure we did have, and then it goes into the story. So that's, like I said, they play around with those sort of things, which is fun.
Interesting.
Part of the fun of being a Doctor Who fan, I suppose. And I think that to curate your own sort of library, whether it's of books or of DVDs or of CDs, or the audio dramas, for example, that's probably the sensible way to go, because there's no way everybody could possibly own all of it. I did try and own everything for a time, Luke, and I was quite successful in amassing a collection of I'd say 3/4 of the Doctor Who books that had ever been published. But eventually, I did have to give in at some point in the late noughties, admit defeat. But I told myself I don't need to own everything to be a Doctor Who fan. It's a lesson well learned.
Yeah, I think I'm getting all the Target novels now. Sorry, I know when like a kid or anyone first finds Zoom and they start changing the backgrounds. I kind of worked that out like 5 minutes into the show.
Has he
I was
got
like,
a
oh my
new
god!
toy?
Yeah, so I've got the TARDIS behind me. So if anyone's thinking, so like the Celestial, not Celestial Toymaker, because that's a term that shouldn't be used anymore. What is it? It is the Giggle. The Giggle is written from the perspective of the Toymaker in the Target novelization, which is quite which is quite different and quite an interesting read. So I've started getting in all the old Targets, and then I was like, well, I'll do the old Virgin Adventures, and I was like, no, this is just too much now. This is getting a bit too much. I'll just stick to the Targets, just the new ones that are coming out, and try and pick one up when I can, because there's a Forbidden Planet close by. So yeah, you don't have to own everything to be a Doctor Who fan.
The amazing world of Doctor Who is as personal as we need or want it to be, I think. And it's the same goes with the action figure collection. I love the character options figures. I sincerely do. 20 years ago, bought a ton of them. For the kids, obviously. For the kids, that's what I told everybody at any rate. So I bought quite a lot of these things, but again, I had to admit defeat when I couldn't really find them, no matter how badly I wanted to. There's been a new set of very, very pretty painted, articulated bits of plastic been revealed since we last spoke. And I'm long past the point where I'm going to waste off a tank of petrol driving around various high streets to pick them up. I'm just happy for the people who are able to track them down, I suppose. So we complained recently about these kind of special editions, these limited editions that you can only buy on the website, as if this range of figures wasn't exclusive enough to try and find. So that's something that we officially don't like here at Type 40. But what can you do? They sell fairly well, so of course they're going to keep on doing that. But they are putting out brand new sets in B&M featuring classic monsters. Now, they only announced these a few days ago, and they're starting to hit the shops already, including this Revenge of the Cybermen set. there. Now, I think some of these figures have been
Oh,
out in
yes.
various packs or something before, but I long since sort of lost track of this. It says in the press release here, this impressive re-release of a well-loved set includes updated and improved versions of the Cyber Leader and 2 Cybermen, as well as a Cybermat accessory. So has anybody seen this, and is this something you would add to your collection and next to those books, maybe, Anthony, for old time's sake?
Oh, do you know what? I would have given my left arm to have those when I was little.
Yeah.
My goodness. You know,
I wondered what you were going to say. You went for the arm. Good boy.
I did. You know, we had, what did we have, Dan, David? Help. We
had Dapol Daleks.
I'm older than you. So we had Weetabix figures, which literally came out of a back of a Weetabix packet.
Yes.
There was a scene on the back, and you literally had these cardboard figures that you would play with infinitum. Then they would, you know, collapse and crumble, and that would be it. So the opportunity to own something like this would have been absolutely amazing. Do you know what, Dan? I looked at these when people started seeing them and talking about them. And I thought, gosh, it's great, isn't it? Because there's a backdrop, the Cybermen are there, it's Revenge of the Cybermen. But, you know, I feel a bit like you about them, Dan. You know, it takes an enormous effort to go find them. I particularly like the B&M sets because they're significantly cheaper than the collector's sets that you have to buy online. Because I feel as though they're a bit of a collector's item and tapping into a certain market, whereas these seem to be mass market and mass appeal in the same way that maybe the original character options around Eccleston and Tennant's time, you seem to be able to afford them. So you can afford these, but the effort that it would take to drive around, because I think there's another, is there a Dalek, a special weapons Dalek as well, Dan, in this release?
There's more.
Yeah, I would love that too, but the effort of driving around trying to find it, that avenue of pleasure has long gone.
Of course, these are the Cybermen that wear flared trousers in the Season 12 Classic. This is the one where the Cybermen release a space plague, isn't it, on the space beacon Nerva to sort of bump off the crew, and the Doctor and Sarah and Harry get sort of embroiled in all of that. It's a story I've always had sort of mixed feelings about, but the Cybermen themselves are lots of fun. And don't they have their guns built into their helmets as well, David? So they fire.
They do. It's so they give it's a porning gag coming, but yes, that's a wonderful piece of headcanon. Thank you very much. But yes, they do. Then they make a sort of like whoa, 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 whoa sound when they fire, and
that's very good.
Yeah, thank you. And I do my own Foley, and yes, I do think they are slightly shit because of the fact that they don't actually have guns, and I do prefer I think they're the sort of like the missing link between between the invasion Cybermen and then the Cybermen of Earthshock onwards. I think that it's this sort of like the Cybermen, the years we don't talk about sort of years. They were going through some sort of fashion crisis at that time, I believe.
Well, I find these very appealing in a way that I don't now for the later ones or the earlier ones. In fact, I do find that when they release a figure of a character or a design that only featured once, you know, if it was only on screen for one scene, in fact, that's my ideal. I'm getting that's exclusive. It's the novelty value, I think, Charlotte. And that's why my eyes were out on stalks when I saw that the Special Weapons Dalek was part of the other set, just as Anthony said there. History of the Daleks, number 20, in this long-running range from character options. A fabulous Special Weapons Dalek from 1988's Remembrance of the Daleks, and they've gunked it up there, made it look all rusty and knackered, just the way I like it. I'm like, I think, no, I want it, but I know I'm not going to be able to find it, so why put myself through it all over again, Charlotte?
It's like you said, when it's something a bit more unique, I think we've sort of, because they've got so much product now, they've had so many figures, that when we go, oh, it's another Doctor and a TARDIS, oh, it's another one of these, you sort of go. Whereas here, like you said, the Special Weapons Dalek has always been a fan sort of favourite, and it's a design that they haven't actually done loads of, which I'm surprised at, considering, like I said, this is a design which even I knew about, even like when I was watching the New Who stuff, I remember thinking multiple times, surely we'll get an updated special weapons Dalek at some point.
Oh,
Like when they kept trying to mess around when we had Teletubby Daleks and all the other Daleks they tried, I was like, you've got a lovely design sat there waiting for a revisit, but to keep the core aspects there. So yeah, these look lovely, but like you said, it's finding them. They have become, because the show, and we've said this before, I think shops don't want to carry Doctor Who stuff the same way they used to. These have become a lot more of a hunt than they used to be, which is such a shame. Because pricing wise, this is what most people will be able to afford. They can't all get the online versions, which are ridiculously priced, I think.
They've reintroduced the blister pack as well, which seals the figures in, because for a time they were exposed, weren't they, to the cold, harsh air and sunlight as part of a sort of environmentally friendly move for packaging, Luke, which, a lot of us, we appreciate the sentiment of that. But when you're spending like 20, 25 quid for a set of nice bits of plastic, you do want a robust packaging to some extent.
Yeah, well, I just got the shooty TARDIS. I had to get a screwdriver to get it out because it was screwed in, obviously. Otherwise, it'd just be attacking it. Just be attacking
absolutely,
with a screwdriver.
Certainly screwed in. That was.
Yeah, no, I think the special weapons Dalek looks a lot better as well. I'm seeing Doctor Who fans don't need to collect everything. I'm currently going through a phase where I'm getting each one of the Doctors from character options, trying to anyway. So I've only got two left on my list, and that's the Fugitive Doctor and 14. 14 is quite readily available if I want to spend 40 odd quid. But the Joe Martin figure is going for like 200 quid on eBay because it's just it's mad how much. Yeah, people are scalping it completely because I don't think it was, from what I read, it wasn't selling amazingly well on character options. So Forbidden Planet had it for a while. And then obviously it's sold out now, and now Big Finish is coming out. She's coming out shooties. It's become a bit rarer. And now, it's going for like 200 quid for a Joe Martin figure. And I was like, you know what? I've managed to get them all now. Got a Capaldi for 20 quid. I was well happy. I've got a War Doctor as well. I was well happy. But yeah.
Fill in the gaps. Bit by bit, Luke.
Can't justify paying 200 quid for a Fugitive Doctor figure. That's astronomical.
There are some Dalek figures. I've just checked. There are some Dalek figurettes from this same brand still available on Amazon. I'm
just purely doing Doctors. I might do. I've got the Emperor Davros from this set, so I might pick this one up because
I've got the Tom
Dalek's my favourite.
I've got the Tom Baker Regeneration figurette from John Pertween's Tom Baker. Yeah,
very nice.
Yeah.
Strangely, they are listing these as the retail price will be determined by each store. I don't know if that's a usual thing that B&M do. As I say, I've never really seen these in the wild, any of them. So I don't know what the usual price would be. I think the $24.99 used to be the listed price. They are arriving in various B&M bargain stores throughout Britain. So good luck out there, everyone, if this is a pastime that you like to indulge in. Rather you than me, let me know how you get on. And all you scalpers out there, you should be quite frankly ashamed of yourselves. I mean, you're talking there, Luke, about your growing line of Doctors figures. You're collecting those. There's been an assortment of Doctors out in the wild this week too, but not at B&M Bargains. They've been out and about there on M-Roads in the courtesy of Greyhound coaches here. There's Colin Baker, Peter Davison, and there are other Doctors dotted here and there on this trip. And yes, to the right of Colin, that is Ricky Tomlinson, aka what's his name, from Jim Royal, from the Royal family, on their way to a convention. Believe it or not, this was the Northern Ireland Comic Con that happened over the weekend, a 2-day event there with the great and the good from cult TV and movies and comics and everything else in the way that all the other Comic Cons are. There's ones in Wales and London and various places. So had you seen these pictures of these Doctors out loose on poor Northern Ireland?
Yeah, I saw it the other day, and it's just like Ricky Tomlinson's just going around in his old Jim Royal costume now, isn't he? He's living, and I saw he was back on set doing some stuff with Brookside as well, which I was like, oh, is that
Wonderful.
right? Yeah, I was like, that was quite cool to see. But yeah, it's nice to see him. It looks like a Jolly Boys out in there, doesn't it?
Yeah,
Jesus.
yeah, absolutely. Off the Margate.
Yeah,
I like the
pretty much,
idea
yeah.
that Ricky Tomlinson, one of Britain's best-known character actors, thinks that people may not recognise him unless he's got the yellow and black polo neck on. Charlotte.
He's done a couple of things just as himself the last couple of years. And he's been funny. Like, do you know those sort of DNA stuff they do now, where
Yeah.
like celebs track back?
Yeah.
And he did one, and he was absolutely hilarious because he had an idea in his head, and it was nothing like what he thought his family were going to be. And he's very dry, Tomlinson, isn't he?
Yeah.
So he's just no thought, no filter, just said what he thought. Yeah, no, it's lovely that still a lot of the classic Doctors do want to do these conventions. Like,
Yeah.
I think we've all said they've done enough service at this point. They don't have to, but the fact that they keep doing them just shows how much they clearly love having that connection still with the fans and being able to talk and sort of reminisce a bit about their time in Doctor Who and other stuff they've done. Like Davidson, he's got plenty of other shows he could talk about.
I'm amused by the idea that they could all be sat round there on the coach or at a service station on the halfway mark or whatever, or in the green room whilst Ricky Tomlinson plays that banjo that he had in the Royal Family, and they all sit there sort of clapping and singing along. I think that could be quite good. Or maybe they could do some sort of the theme from Button Moon, maybe, or one of those shows that the brother Peter Davison composed theme tunes for various shows that he did in the 70s and the 80s. That could be quite a laugh, I think. But there are pictures all over social media. Now, this is courtesy of the coach driver, believe it or not. That's Stephen Gilmore. Thank you so much, Stephen, for sharing these. Here are 4 doctors relaxing unsuspectingly whilst they're being snapped. There's Paul McGann, as spry as ever, Colin and Sylvester and Peter. I think a good old cant about whatever it is, about the issues of the day, or maybe what time the cafe opens, I think. Or could they be thinking about asking Ricky to give him a tune a little later on? It's lovely to see the Doctors together, and this never gets old for me. Do you know what I mean, Luke? It's like there's a novelty value to multi-Doctors out in the wild.
Yeah, I just got visions of just as soon as that photo is finished, Ricky Tomlinson and Colin Baker just pulling out a couple of tinnies and just getting smashed on the bus and having a great time. And I'm like, that would be, and Paul McGann just doing something in the background. Sylvester McCoy just playing the spoons on someone's head. I was like, oh, that'd be, no, it was like, we bumped into, when we come back from Hooverville, we were like, oh, we'll go via York, because there was York Comic Con was on, and Peter Davison was there as well. So we met Peter Davison on our way back because Rob, who plays Billy in Hooligans, Peter Davison's his doctor. So we went to go meet him, and Peter Davison was in great spirits, and they did the big Q&A, and everyone was asking him Doctor Who fans, and then Rob decided to ask him about the one time he was in Jonathan Creek playing a vicar, and it was like, oh, okay, it's like curveball there. But no, it's nice to see him out and about, enjoying life, and just I hope they were cracking tinnies open on the bus. That's what I hope.
At an evening with Peter Davison that I went to a number of years ago, and I've sent Dan the photo, so he knows I'm not lying about this. Previously, I asked him a question with the photo signing bit. I didn't interrupt the thing, and I said, "Oh yeah, I really loved you in The Last Detective, because I just thought that was a really, really good role." And he went, "Oh yeah, it was, wasn't it? I really enjoyed that." And I said, "I've been trying to look for DVDs of it, and I can't find them at present." He says, "They are still available. Look on this website," and he gave me the card. So that's what I call a good actor. He knows where his merch is available from.
I thought you were going to say
he was going to get DVD for you.
Yeah,
I thought you were going to say he was going to say to you, if you come out to the car park, and in the back of his car, he's got a boot full of them. That would be quite fun. There's 4 doctors there having fun in Ireland. They did manage to rope in a 5th, believe it or not, by crossing over into another franchise. Here they are, along with other Doctor Who luminaries, with Christopher Lloyd. Doc Brown himself joins the Doctors there. This could be a parallel universe thing. 86 years of age, Christopher Lloyd. Fabulous to see them all together. There's Sophie, Nicola, and Janet too. The 80s kid in me just skipped. My heart skipped a beat ever so slightly when I saw this, Anthony. It's wonderful.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right, Dan, because, you know, bringing Doctor Who's together to stand in a line like that is always quite exciting. And while you were talking and I was listening to everybody chatting about Doctors together, you know, I always have to keep going back to old classic Doctor Who. But in the 80s, Doctors were going to America, like Spirit of Light conventions, and standing together. So we would see as fans in the mid 80s, you know, Tom Baker stood with other Doctors. And in England, we realized that never happened, but in America, it did. So when you saw pictures of, you know, Patrick Troughton up to Peter Davison and Colin Baker all stood in a line, I think British fans were slightly, you know, jealous and envious that they had never seen that. And I think it took, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it took till about 1993, which was a Panopticon event in London to celebrate 30 years. And as many Doctors as I had seen at that point, which was John Pertwee up to Sylvester McCoy, but discounting Tom Baker because he didn't stand with the other Doctors, which is what we were seeing in the United Kingdom, was the closest I'd ever got to a photograph of that nature. Paul McGann was a twinkle in, you know, American Fox's eye at that point, but that was the most Doctors that we had seen together. Now, I think there's probably the largest number of Doctors still with us, thankfully, that could stand together ultimately in a line like that. But back in the 1980s, you were very lucky to get, you know, John Pertwee.
Now you mention it. I mean, I don't know if we could fill a cricket team because I don't know how many people make up a cricket team. But I think we've got football teams. We've got a football teams and a cricket team's worth of Doctors at least. I mean, back in 1985, of course, Doctor Who wasn't in great shape, but Christopher Lloyd was as the star of one of the biggest films, if not the biggest film of the year, Back to the Future, celebrating its 40th anniversary this year. Has to be one of my favourite movies, and expect some more crossover coverage from us on that later in 2025 even. So, but that's enough of that for the time being. I think we should go and check in with the live chat at 88 miles per hour. I think that's the magic number, isn't it? And see what they've got to say about all of this so far.
The walls of time are breaking down. You need to listen. The only way to save the universe. Watch Type 40.
Bless them, bless them. Thank you, everybody who's joined us on this edition of the show so far. What have you got to say for yourselves? Let's find out. Let's find out, shall we? We have an evening, everybody, from Adrian James, and a hail chat from Garbage. Hail and evening to you all. Pluto joined us too. Earlier start for Pluto. But good to see you anyway. Hope you're still around. Donnie is in the live chat as well. Sentai Ranger Donnie, who wishes us a happy Star Trek month. Why do they get a month and we get a day? I'm sure it's just a day. It's just a day. It's just a day. Tom is here from T-Dwarf Productions. He's currently watching his favourite film, Eight-Legged Freaks. It's not a biopic about the Nolan sisters. It's a monster movie about spiders. So,
God damn, we're in the mood for dancing.
Always, mate. Always. Funky says hi. Hi, Funky. Say hi, Funky. Hi, Funky. And we've got divas, dinosaurs, and demons also parading around the live chat there too, comparing monsters with Tom as we do. But we're the great one, suggests Richard Brooks. Depends who you think is the great one. Tom Baker is the great one to many of us.
All praise to the great one.
Always, always. Stephen O'Neill is still in Wigan. Never mind, mate. Now very chilly in Wigan, according to Stephen, Charlotte.
See, I read that comment wrong originally when I saw it in the chat. So.
Well, all I'll say, Stephen, as long as you're not near the pier, you should be fine.
Oh, is it parky out there? Yeah. Never mind. David Mullins in the live chat as well, added to his book collection this week with Telos Real-Time Pictures book. Excellent book, strong recommend. Yeah, we're going to have to try and get Dylan on the show and bring Keith back as well, because it's been a while since Keith Barnfather was on the show. Keith, if you're watching, you can't avoid Type 40 again forever. Come back for a return stint soon. Evening all, says Rob Alexander. David Mullins here too. Who else? Yeah, David, there he is. There's David Mullen. David Howe's books were and are superb. Yeah, that's those decade books we were talking about, Anthony. Lots more by David, come to think of it. He's been part of several ranges of really successful studied works, hasn't he?
Yeah, and those kind of Doctor handbooks as well, I seem to recall as well, which focused in on each Doctor, and then they did a compendium of that. And there was a really good Doctor Who program guide for the classic series that David Howe put together, which was epic. It was like a tome. It was huge amount of information contained in one book.
It was wonderful, wasn't it?
I really enjoyed books like that, and did enjoy books about that for the old series. I feel as though I don't know, in that time it was so innocent, wasn't it? We didn't know everything that we knew about Doctor Who as we do today. And it was quite nice getting that information for the very first time. Not I'm saying, oh, I know it all now, because I really don't. But I feel as though, lots of ground has been covered. Sure, new bits of information come to light, but those were the first books that kind of captured that.
They were, Anthony. And I remember a History of the Daleks sort of book from the mid-'80s. I don't know if David Howe had anything to do with it, but it took a sort of narrative line whereby the Daleks in the first Dalek story, The Dead Planet, were actually an offshoot of Davros's first Dalek experiment.
Oh, that's clever.
And Davros and Nyder had gone to visit them, and it all gone a bit wrong, and that's why they were cut off. So I was just sort of like, I read that for the first time when I was in my mid-30s, and I thought, my God, what a great piece of continuity this is. So yeah, and so stuff like that. As you said, it was all really innocent and just really creative, and that sort of blew my mind. And in my head, that's canon now. So.
No, I do love stuff like that. I remember David Banks' Cybermen book, and so many great books in Doctor Who. There's some dodgy ones as well. They weren't all great. They weren't all bangers.
No.
But most of them had got something to recommend, even if they weren't that well written or that exhaustively researched. The artwork was nice. Or they made someone's childhood, Randy Howell is in the live chat there, catching up at 1.5 speed. Thank you. Thank you, Randy. Good luck. Hang on tight is all I can say. And people are comparing notes about whether they've managed to find the Cybermen figures or not, or the Dalek ranges. Good luck with that is all that I can really say. The Rambo Dalek, says Friador Nikolai Kerensky, sorry. The Rambo, that's the special weapons Dalek, is the Rambo Dalek. Just needs a bandana to top it off. I never thought of that, Luke. Needs some stage gear and a finishing move.
Rambo Dalek. Yeah, that would be the Asylum of the Daleks should have done it. They should have put the bandana on it. So there you go.
It's the Brian Blessed of Daleks, really, isn't it? The special.
Yeah, absolutely.
It'd be funny. Get him to do the voice for it as well.
That's amazing, Charlotte. That'd be so funny.
Now, if they don't do that, I'd be really disappointed if it ever comes back. Jonathan Cox is in the live chat. Evening, everyone. Kieran's into. So is Rose. Talking generations of Cybermen. That's a whole other show, a whole other discussion. Ask David Banks. He seems to have it all straight in his head. Garbage says, I accept your offer. I accept your Joe Martin figure and the £200 offer for taking off your hands, says Garbage. See what he's doing there. One man's rubbish is another man's treasure. That's the truth of the matter.
Indeed.
Yes, it is. And Nicholas Horton says, I want character options to do a cloth face Cyberman with genuine cloth. That would be good. Haven't they done those yet? Haven't they done the 10th Planet ones?
I think they have. I don't think they have
the
any
Capaldi ones, I don't think. Like, because they were different. They were based off classic, but they were still their own sort of
Were they
classic.
Were they the Capaldi ones from the end of that sort of his last sort
Yeah, the
of
two-parter.
series.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then when in the scene which still scarred me
Yeah.
when you hear pain like
Yeah.
those.
Yeah. I recall the kind of Mondasian Cybermen coming out from 10th Planet. I think there might even be a Roboman. Somebody will correct me in the chat.
Oh,
A
wow.
Roboman in the box as well. There might even be a Mechanoid. Oh, God, I've got a lot. I've got a lot
Love
of
those.
I've got a
Love
lot of
those.
rubbish in my house. God, blimmin' heck.
Dongo is a happy camper tonight. I met Colin Baker a few weeks ago at the Comic Con at Braehead, Glasgow. He was a genuinely nice chap and lovely to speak to. Yeah, I have lots of people tell me that Colin is a really fun guy to meet. Whatever mood that he's in, you always get entertainment. You get your value. You get to meet the Sixth Doctor. Yeah, I've never met Colin. I don't think I've ever even been in the same room as Colin Baker, come to think of it. But I intend to at some point in the future. That'd be good.
I've seen him in a couple of plays, and he was wonderful.
That's as good as. That's the same room, technically. That's as good as.
At Panto one year in the early 90s, my sister, he was playing at Panto. My sister went up to see and just went, "Hello, my brother's a big Doctor Who fan." She'd only be 8 or 9 at the time.
Oh.
And he said, "Oh, wonderful, wonderful." Did you? And she said, "So he autographed the program," and she went, "But his favourite Doctor is Peter Davison," and he just sort of looked really pissed off. At that point, she said.
People love the image of Doc Brown with our Doctor Who legends. Of course they did. How wouldn't you? Who wouldn't? It's fantastic. As Stephen Braddock says, it's lovely to see Doc Brown with the Doctors. I couldn't agree more. So my heart leapt when I saw that. But Ezra Goldstein suggests it could be a Doctor Who Taxi crossover. That's a deep dive now in 2025.
Oh, yeah. That'd be good.
I love the entire Back to the Future trilogy, says Donny. And we have Sudden Bush. Sudden Bush, is that right? In the live chat, who was born in 85. So their first Doctor Who was the 2005. So you're a child of the new series, is how we describe you. Yeah, 88 miles per hour, says Nicholas Horton. Who could forget that? Who could forget that? And Craig Lightower has met everybody. Look here in 1997. Tom, Peter, Colin, and Sylvester. So I met who have I met? Met Sylvester in that queue in the toilets. I've been in the same room as Tom and Peter, but I didn't talk to either of them. I was working around to them. I spent quite a bit of time with Paul McGann last year. Who else have I met? I can't remember now. I can't remember. I'm not going to read that out, Domgo. It's absolutely filthy, and you know it, you naughty, dirty boy. And we've got a Hail Dan panel and chat from Ezra Goldstein. Thank you so much, everybody, for all of these memories and all of these comments so far. There's a hell of a lot more to talk about. Of course there is, because this is Type 40 Live on YouTube, Rumble, Facebook, and X. We can't promise all the answers, but we can guarantee a bit of fun while we get there in orderly fashion. Sort of.
What was that?
Oh, you've not seen that one yet, Luke.
Oh, dear me. Dear me, she's been drinking something funny, I'll tell you.
The distaste in your voice is audibly apparent. Okay, so Billie Piper. Still absent. Her fair backside is yet to fill this chair. It would appear, or it's gently dipping when she does take her seat as the lead of Doctor Who. Maybe at some point in the future, hopefully we'll know about it, unless it's filmed in secret. I don't know. So at the moment, though, Billie Piper is the closest thing Doctor Who has to a lead actor. She's the one left holding the entire baby, really, I think. Poor girl. We saw her a few weeks ago speaking at a convention, and she was fielding questions, wasn't she, about her role in the series. And I feel she handled that quite expertly, but she's still on the promotional bandwagon at the moment because she's in Wednesday season 2 over on Netflix, a very popular show. So she's promoting that for the most part. And this time she was speaking to Glamour UK magazine, a full interview and an exclusive photo shoot. Now, I confess, I'm not, generally speaking, a reader of Glamour UK magazine, Charlotte, but I've read it, so you don't have to. I've dug in to the pages
well done.
of Glamour UK to find out what Billie Piper has to say, because obviously this is a very normie publication and outlet. And Billie, to the general public, is still very, very identifiable with Doctor Who. We heard a few weeks ago say that it was pretty much the role, certainly, that made her as an actress, and how grateful she is to it. So somewhere like Glamour, they're bound to mention it in an exhaustive interview. I'd say that's likely, isn't it, Charlotte?
I don't know how exhaustive, because this is a fashion magazine and Billie has got a big show like Wednesday. So it probably would come up, but I don't think this will be a major push, would be my guess. I've not read it. We will see.
They do take the opportunity to put her in mainly the suit, come to think of it. But she wears it beautifully, I think, Anthony. Still a striking looking woman.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah. It's funny when you talk about classic Doctor Who, I get all excited, and then when you start talking about new Doctor Who, I get kind of like, oh,
it'll be over soon enough. I promise.
So, how long have we got on this one? Yeah, you're right, Dan. She looks stunning and beautiful, and she was always very kind when you went to watch Doctor Who being filmed in those early days of the program coming back. So lots of things to be grateful to Billie Piper for when she was playing Rose Tyler. Did lots of interviews for that, and I really liked her at the time. This whole idea, ask somebody else, Dan. Ask Luke. It'll be inspiring.
Yeah, it's been 2-3 months, but it's been 2 or 3 months. But this image, it still is as it doesn't lose its sting. I feel the nation, certainly all of geek culture, is still laughing at this. And early on in the article in Glamour, which is titled, now get this for a headline: Billie Piper on embracing the darkness, loving messy women. Speaking as someone who knows, that's a very dangerous game to play, and being a child prodigy. So that's what this is. And they start off by saying, she's so they mentioned 30 years. She's 30 years into a career. And they talk about the clothes that she's wearing, but they say here that she's brimming with energy as she runs through her career in this article, playing Rose Tyler in Doctor Who. But they highlight here that she's not allowed to talk about whether she will take over from Ncuti. So they get that in absolutely right away. So this does seem to be a very strong edict from the BBC, from Bad Wolf and Disney, whoever's still involved, have obviously expressly told anyone who comes into contact with Billie Piper, don't ask her about X, Y, and Z. And even Glamour UK, as you say, Charlotte, this is fantasy TV you would think would be outside of their wheelhouse. They put this front and center at the top of the article.
Yeah, because they probably wanted to make it obvious. We can't tell you anything. And you saw Billie at that convention a couple of weeks ago. She can't talk. So it's sort of this, I think it would have, the sad thing is, because she's in such a high profile show right now, she's going to get it probably asked more than if she wasn't in Wednesday right now. Do you know, like that sort of sod's law? In that way, it's brilliant she's in the show, and I bet she's thinking, God, can I talk about Wednesday? Can I talk about that? But I've got people asking me about Doctor Who. And she can't say anything. That's the frustration. I think she's going to get incredibly frustrated. And I don't blame her.
Billie thing is becoming a bit of a big thing at the moment. So, because she's being asked about it wherever she goes. So it must be quite for her, if you know what I mean. And I did the sigh there as part of my own sound effects again. She must be going, she must feel completely saddled by it. And it's really, really, it's quite, it must be terrible for her not to be able to, knowing that she's going to be asked about it and then just go, look, before we start, you can't ask me anything about that because I can't talk about it. Oh, right. Okay. Thanks for letting us know. And it must be quite a weight round her neck as well. So I do feel for her.
It is starting to feel like a bit of an albatross.
Yeah.
The entire Whoniverse, whether you're involved with it on the television making it, or simply people who just talk about it. I think it is starting to become the subject. We don't exactly dread it coming up, but knowing that there's nothing that anybody can really say, it's all treading water. Understandably, Glamour UK, they ask Billie about her future, because it is quite a career. 27 years since her breakout #1 hit as a recording artist. That's nothing. That's no small feat in itself to still be relevant after all that time, I feel, Luke. And so it's quite natural that Glamour UK would ask her what's next. But of course, we hear so many mixed signals about it all. You think, well, surely if she is contracted to Doctor Who, she'd mention something to do with it. But here they ask her, so what's next for Billie Piper, who's conquered music, dance, and international television? And she says, I'm probably not going to go back into music, but I've been thinking recently about how I could merge the worlds. I love dancing and want to find out if there is a way for me to dance and sing, but not live, and have it sort of married with a movie. So basically a musical. She's talking about doing a musical, which, to be fair, in 2025 doesn't rule out that she's talking about Doctor Who after the Devil's Chord from last year. So, but reading this, it's very clear that Doctor Who, okay, so she can't talk about it, but even so, it doesn't even seem to be at the forefront of her mind. Doesn't mention I've got obligations, or shortly I'll be going back to this or that or the other. She couldn't be, her mind clearly couldn't be further away from Doctor Who. I mean, what's your take on this, Luke? I mean, is it starting to grate a little? And should we take this as any kind of indicator that Billie may not even be contractually involved at all?
No, I don't think so. I think it is starting to grate. Obviously, it would be if you're coming out and you're in one of the most successful Netflix shows of all time, and then all they want to ask is, so when you're going back to Doctor Who, it's going to be like, right, okay, just leave it, just talk about Wednesday. She's very good at Wednesday, and she's obviously, I don't know if you've seen Wednesday or not, but she's obviously teed up to return in season 3 as a main character, because of the way it ended. And I think they said they're going to try and get it out a little bit sooner, because it was 3 years between the last series and this series. I think they're aiming for 18 months from this season to the next season. So they'd be looking to go into production sometime next year. So if they are going to shoot Doctor Who, then next year, then she would be unavailable for a lot. But they only shoot over in Ireland anyway, so it's only a quick hop over from Wales to Cardiff. That's for all the Cardiff listeners watching. But we know now that the TARDIS still is current. I think it's still currently standing, or it was still standing over the summer, and it was a lot more complete than I thought it was. Because an actor that I know posted some photos on the set while he was working in Bad Wolf, and I was like, "Oh, I'm very, very surprised."
So
to see he was still there.
They could be potentially using it for storage. Maybe in the meantime, they've rented it out to Peter Davis, and he can store those copies of the Last Detective DVDs if he wants to mail them out to.
Maybe, who knows? But yeah, no, the TARDIS is still. As far as I'm aware, it's still standing over the summer, and it looked very, very complete. I thought they'd taken half of it down, but no. So who knows? We'll find out soon. But she's incredible in Wednesday as well. She's very, very good, and she she sings in Wednesday as well, which is nice.
I'm going to have to start watching that, because everybody seems to love it, and I like the fact that Billie's in something that's good and popular and seems to be going places. It feels like a relevant show. And I think she's a major talent. She should be in relevant things. She was fantastic as Rose Tyler. She was great as the Moment too. Yeah. And I do kind of feel for her to be unofficially the lead of Doctor Who, to be fielding these questions constantly, and to the point where I am there, scouring articles in magazines that aren't really for me, are they? Let's be honest, to see if she's going to mention it at all. But they do lead off that they're keeping their eyes peeled to see what Billie Piper does next. And Netflix will drop Wednesday season 2 part 2 on the 3rd of September. It sounds like Luke has binge watched it all already. He can't get enough, quite clearly. So if you're a Wednesday fan, let us know what you think. And isn't it great to see Billie Piper in something successful, seemingly long running, that people like, Charlotte? Because obviously it's great for Doctor Who that Billie continues to do good stuff. Of course it is, because she's so identifiable with Doctor Who. But also it's good for fans of genre TV as well, whilst Doctor Who is off screen for however long. But there's good stuff on that stars our legends to some degree or another.
Yeah, I always find whether they've had a big role like she did with Rose, or even just a small role, just to see those actors 5, 10 years later go, oh, they're big. I remember when Tom Ellis, because we recently talked about Thursday Murder Club, when he started to blow up as Lucifer in that show, I remember feeling like this odd bit of, oh, I'm so happy he's got that role, and it's really showing off his skill. And it sort of made him known in America a lot, that role. So that was the big thing. So it's sort of that thing of, oh, he's become good. And I think we have that feeling as Doctor Who fans. But here's the thing. If then the Wednesday thing, what Luke said, I think that just more sort of makes it very clear that Billie's not a long-term perspective. Like, whatever she is, it's going to probably be 1 or 2 specials at most. I think that's becoming increasingly clear now that she's such a busy actress. She's got so much plans. Clearly, she's already thinking about musicals or things like that. That we're going to have another blink and you miss her, sort of time-wise, lead again. And I just think that's such a bad position for the show right now. We need a stable actor who can be in this role for 3 series at least, just to get the Doctor recognisable for a long time on the screen.
Stability is very important, very, very important to a show like Doctor Who, David, isn't it? Because I think it's the stability. I mean, okay, in the 70s, Tom was doing it for a long, long time, but Peter Davison was quite, I always wish he'd have hung around for longer, but that was stability as well. The show seemed fixed when you're 7 or 8, even 3 years can seem like quite a long time. It's certainly enough to make a new set of fans, isn't it? I think Charlotte's hit upon an important point there.
Totally. And I think a name that she's already mentioned would be brilliant in the lead role, Tom Ellis. I think we need somebody like him of his stature to sort of like anchor and steady it and say, look, I'm going to be here for a while. Deal with it if you don't like it, or hooray if you do. And it needs someone of that sort of. It needs to. It's the thing with Doctor Who at the moment is that it's too itty bitty, fly in the night. Oh, you're only here for a moment. Now it's somebody else. There needs to be that continuity that you had with Peter. I know Colin's time was a little fractious, but even with Sylvester, he was there for 3 years, and the most successful time of Doctor Who is when you've had characters or lead actors playing the character who have steadied the ship and then taken it forward in their own specific way. And I don't think we've had that over the last, since really Peter Capaldi left us. I remember when Capaldi
took the role, because the Smith era had been so choppy and chopped up. They made a point of saying, there'll be a series this year and next year at the same. They told us what we'd get, when we get it, how many episodes. And I remember that, obviously, I was an adult, a parent at the time, but knowing what we were going to get, generally speaking, when we were going to get it, they're serious about this. They're going to roll this out properly. This has got a chance to get its hooks into the audience. And then they took it off for, I think, after one special, there was a year's gap. So none of this helps. Stephen Moffat knows that. He's speaking about it more candidly now as time goes on. And good for him. I mean, it's just a pity. I don't know. I suppose there are pitfalls to every job, just like every sector that anybody could work in. Yes, Glamour UK magazine, they had that interview there with Billie Piper. Not much about Doctor Who at all, as you could probably gather in there, but we'll keep watching anyway and see if the poor girl cracks. No, we'll keep watching anyway, because I said she's the closest thing we've got to a lead at the moment. And in all fairness, I am generally speaking invested in her career and what she's doing. So it's never a chore to read about people that we like who are doing well and doing nice things, I think, Luke. And if we can get together and recommend that each other watches this stuff, then it's even better.
Yeah, obviously there's so much good TV coming up now as well, and it looked like Thursday Media Club had X amount of Doctor Who cast in it as well. I think Tom Ellis just did a funny interview as well when he was saying one day on set Spielberg flew in via helicopter and was there to meet all the cast, all the head honchos, you know,
Oh,
and
fantastic.
he was with David Tennant, and them two were like, "Oh, is he gonna? Will we get a chance to meet him?" And no, they didn't, and they had a bit of a laugh and a giggle about it. But if you look back at it as well, I know Moffat just said recently, if you look back at like the 70s and the 80s, you had John Pertwee for 5 years, you had Tom for 7, and then in this current iteration, we've had like 25 Doctors in the same length of time. It's like, Jesus Christ, it's so
It seems so.
inconsistent now. He's just no one there just to be like, right, cool, I'm just going to stay for a solid X amount of years. It's like, no, change straight away. And so, I think it needs a massive. I think TV is. I think thing is TV has changed. The landscape on how TV is made has changed massively. That's a wider conversation on why you can't get a series every year and why
totally.
8 episodes is there. So this is a very broad, long conversation on why that's not possible now. And it's nice to see other actors pop up and doing well. And I'd be well happy with Tom Ellis being the Doctor. I love a little Welsh Doctor going on. So I know that annoys some people in
And
the
look
chat,
on the
but there you
bright
go.
side as well. Look on the bright side, everybody. At least you've had 250 editions of this show to watch and rewatch till your little hearts are content there. Thank you for all the support we received surrounding show 250 the other day. Our talk about the Thursday Murder Club in particular has gone down very well, and people going to find that film on the strength of our fun conversation and walk through the various Doctor Who connections with that. We had a lot of fun talking about that here on Type 40 Live on Rumble, X, YouTube, and Facebook. There'll be more of that sort of stuff coming up too. Don't doubt it. More recommendations from the past and the present and into the future too. We'll be keeping an eye on our Doctor Who legends and getting together to chat about it with all you lot over a Jaffa Cake and a warm cup of something as the winter approaches. Okay, coming up, we're going back to all our pasts here in one way or another. That's coming up in a moment. Before that, yes, more golden faces and golden voices coming your way from telly times past as part of the Type 40 Live Doctor Who ad break. Here are some Doctor Who famous voices and faces trying to flog you whatever bits of old tat they possibly can here in these classic adverts. See how many of them you remember, and we'll see you right back here in a couple of minutes.
Haven't you gone yet?
Are you trying to get rid of me?
No, of course not.
You're up to something. I can tell. Come on, out with it.
I'm making a Nescafe commercial.
On your own? But we always do them together.
Not this one, Richard.
Why not?
It's about those precious moments when everyone's gone out for the day, and I can enjoy my Nescafe in peace.
Oh, can't we both enjoy it?
No.
Nescafe. Coffee at its best. Couldn't I just stay for the bean shake?
Take the challenge to create the ultimate sonic screwdriver. This amazing set includes 3 sonic screwdrivers. Mix and match the sections with over 80 combinations, including multiple lights and sound effects. Have hours of fun with the Doctor Who Personalise Your Sonic Screwdriver set.
From character.
Please, play one last game. For the car.
Not the Toyota.
There aren't many of them on the road. And it's very fast.
Tell him it runs on 2-star petrol.
Στέφανε, Γιέμου, το παιδί που έχασα!
Papa?
One of my favorite adverts. That we're back here on Type 40 Live, Rumble, X, YouTube, and Facebook with more of all that and all of this, and two of him can we take to what we got to here in the 1990s at your favorite bookstore. That was where you could find Tom Baker flogging his autobiography. One of the highlights of the 90s that was for me, and a book that I would never donate to the charity. I've never even come close to chucking that one out, Anthony, but maybe one declutter. I think I've got it on audiobook as well. Oh, dear me. All our past there as Doctor Who fans. We're here in the cloister room and collecting our thoughts to rejoin you here. Have I got everybody back? I think I have. We're talking the past, the present, and the future of all things Doctor Who. As always, I've got Anthony Weiner. He's here. We've got Luke Walters there. We've got Charlotte Shields and David Millington, husky-voiced, but still ready to the crease and in bat.
Sorry,
I've just realised that's a very small cricket bat.
It's a very small. It's a very small. I've only got a very small piece of wood there, so
make up your own jokes.
Yes, I've been sucking a few fishermen's friends as well. In the break.
Oh dear. Okay, so between us, we're doing everything. We're doing everything that we can to yank the brand. We can't trust the BBC or Bad Wolf or Disney to do this, can we? So we're doing everything we can. Take a corner each to pull the entire brand out of the sand and the dreck and the mud and all that, and we'll do whatever we can, however we can. Charlotte,
we're used to this now. Come on, damn Doctor Who fans.
Yanking the brand.
I was just thinking, how many of those 250 previous episodes have we been pissed off about something or other? It's probably best not mentioned. But so we're going to trek back now to happier times. I suppose it could depend on who you are, couldn't it? I'm talking particularly about the 1990s, 1995. What a year that was for British culture. Britpop was in full swing, a confrontation in the singles charts between Blur and Oasis and the album chart too. Come to think of it, that was the cultural event, I think, of the year in Britain. But television, movies, everything else around it was incredibly exciting too. It felt like we didn't really know what was coming next. There was so much to hear, so much to read, and so much to watch. Doctor Who fans, on the other hand, we had to, as much fun as all that was, we had to make do with delicately sort of stroking our old merchandise, Anthony, and making a wish that one day Doctor Who would come back. I mean, if you were a reader, you were in luck. There was a growing line of new adventures in paperback form there on the Virgin Publishing range, so that was good for some. And of course, we did have the gradual reissuing of the classic series on VHS. That was more for me. It was a sort of a part work in a sense, filling in all the gaps and all the stories that I'd only read about. But what about the Doctor Who legends during that time? What were they doing? Yeah, they'd come out and they'd sign some of the videos and things like that. But generally speaking, they went into the wilderness too. And now and again, they'd pop up in various projects. And that was fantastic. Of course it was. But they were at a premium, I suppose. You had to pay for these things if you could find them. Dramas and documentaries released onto VHS exclusively, really, for the fans, mostly sold via mail order. Now, 3 decades on, believe it or not, one of the most high-profile of these is about to be screened on Rewind TV. This is a free-to-air TV channel, only launched last year. You can get it on Sky and Freeview, and it specializes, this is one of several channels who specialize in showing exclusively classic TV from Britain and the States, and stretching from the 60s right through to the early noughties. So this is good. I like the fact that these sort of channels exist. It's kind of the way that old radio stations were. They used to play stuff from the 40s and the 50s. So I suppose it's the television equivalent of that. And they announced on their social media, this was last week, maybe 10 days ago, that Doctor Who fans may want to stay tuned. Coming on the 13th of September 2025 to Rewind TV, a unique collection of rare and intimate interviews from the longest TV sci-fi series, Doctor Who, the Doctor's 30 years of time travel and beyond. And then they tell you how you can get it. And immediately when I saw this, oh my God, I haven't thought about this documentary in years. I haven't watched it or thought about it. And I thought, I was amazed that anybody was showing this, come to think of it. And 30 years is a long time. And this kind of content has evolved so much. Good on Rewind TV for reaching into the archives and bringing something to the screen for everyone to see, all Doctor Who fans, which is still quite hard to find.
Yeah, when you talked about this, Dan, and I asked what the content for the show was today, and you said this was coming up, I'm amazed. But I think there's a there's a context. There's a context for this. This documentary, when it was first released, not to be mistaken by the Kevin Davies production that was shown on BBC One 30 years inside the TARDIS, in the TARDIS. So this was a documentary that wasn't made by the BBC. Now, I've known, if Bill Baggs is watching this, I've known Bill Baggs for a very long time. Big supporter at the time of these products and continue as they've come out on DVD since. But this was different because this wasn't, and as you say with the book there as well. Oh no, that's the DVD. Sorry, that's the video. But this DVD or this video, when it was released with a book as well. So we were talking about books right at the beginning of the show, but there was a book tie-in to this production. That's the one, Dan. And this was produced by Box Tree Publications. So this wasn't from W.H. Allen. This wasn't from any BBC publication. This was slightly left of field. So this documentary that wasn't necessarily produced by the BBC, not the Kevin Davies version, but produced by Bill Baggs, this was going to be a little bit different. And I think when we start to unpick this a little bit more, because I've watched this documentary twice for the purpose of this show, because I didn't realize that how much I'd forgotten about it and actually enjoyed it sometime more. But I think there's lots to unpick here about this production, because I think it's quite sensational in part. And I think the book that goes with it, because I bought my copy too, I think the book that goes with this is interesting talking point as well.
Yeah.
It was this was a daring commission by BBV Productions. The book was a bestseller, written by Adrian Wrigglesford, as you say, for Box Tree, one of a set of titles that gradually came out from Box Tree and other publishers that, as you say, were completely unofficial. And some of them disappeared without a trace. Others are kind of essential, really, in every fan's collection, if you're a classic fan. This 1995 documentary was produced by BBV Productions, initially released on VHS in the September of 1995, so exactly 30 years ago this month. And it offered a comprehensive retrospective on the entirety of the show from 63 to 95. And it carries the story through to the then present day, to the landscape of what we now call the Whoniverse. In 1995, it speaks to a nicely selected group of people, some of whom had, believe it or not, barely spoken at the time publicly. And this was before the special features and commentaries that we are now so used to that came with the DVD explosion. So, for example, Philip Hinchcliffe is in this. I don't think I'd ever heard Philip Hinchcliffe's voice before I saw this when I bought it in 1995. And I'm not sure what sort of condition it's going to be in when Rewind do broadcast it, but I do think it's great that it's coming out. One of the selling points was obviously because it's an unofficial documentary, they couldn't use any clips of the show, Luke, the show itself, and they had to be very sparing in the photographs they used as well. So one of the key selling points was the use of home video footage shot at various locations, wasn't it, Anthony, throughout the history of the show. So some of it was from The Smugglers and Abominable Snowman, and even some from Sharda, which was, even in 95, after that initial video release, it was still kind of shrouded in mystery.
Yeah, and what's particularly interesting here, Dan, you're absolutely right. I have a little story about the Demons footage, because I'm on the credits for this particular. Bill Baggs isn't paying me, but I'm on the credits for this particular production, because the demons footage, which is used in this, I was working with a collector in Bath to return that to the BBC, not return it, they didn't own it, but to make it available to the BBC to be used in future productions. And I know Keith Barnfather used it for Real-Time Pictures, and Bill Baggs used it for this the Doctors. But what's really interesting beyond the demons is that this is colour footage of the smugglers. So a black and white production that's being seen in colour, and I think that's a bit of a draw for 1995. You know, we didn't really realise that this existed, and as you say, particularly not the Sharda footage as well. So that in itself makes this production unique.
I leapt on this when it came out. Were you conscious of it, David? Were you aware this was happening at the time?
At the time, no. Because I was just about to start university, and I was quite a poor student back in the day. I did have a grant as well, and my fees paid, so I wasn't that poor. But compared to today's students, but my main sort of money was going on the BBC VHS releases. I was aware of the BBV stuff through Doctor Who magazine, but it was a question on what to spend my money on, and I would go for the VHS cassettes and trying to get as many of them as possible. So I sort of had to make a choice whether it was one or the other.
You're far from alone.
Yeah, and sadly, unfortunately, BBV lost out, and it wasn't any reason apart from the fact that I wanted to keep my collection of BBC VHSs coming in, so I had to make a choice as to whether to go for the official stuff or the fan-made stuff. But I do recall seeing it 5 years later when a mate of mine had it, and I was amazed at the behind the scenes or the home video for the cine footage of the smugglers and the abominable, sorry, it's very difficult to put my teeth in, snowmen, because for a lot of people that would have been the first time they had seen any footage
any at all, because apart from the people like Ian Levine who watched it when it went out, because it's lost. And to see it in color as well, even though it's not actually the scenes, but to see them on set or on location, and especially stories that were in black and white in that full color, and to see the actors was just sublime, and it was lovely. It was so lovely, and yeah, I bought the book several years later off the old auction sites, and it is one of my treasured, along with Doctor Who the early years, one of my treasured Doctor Who books. The excitement around the release of this video, this VHS Charlotte, really was something kind of almost the kind of big deal we now get for a Blu-ray box set release, believe it or not. This simple, this humble VHS. Here's a trailer so you can get some inkling as to how it feels here, everybody, if you haven't seen it.
It's the world's longest running science fiction series.
I knew I wanted him to be a figure that the children believed in, that knew that they'd have enough faith in the Doctor to say he'll look after us and we'll be all right under his wing.
And we've got all the gossip in this unique selection of archive interviews.
I did feel like I was suffering a bit from Tom Baker backlash when I took over.
When Tom finished his last sequence, he didn't go to the bar. He just went.
I think John could have put it better. I mean, bless him, he's a dear friend, but I've got good news and bad news. I said, oh, well, let's have the good news. He said, well, Doctor Who's coming back next year. I said, oh, I am pleased. Thinking, oh, goody. And he said, but the bad news is they don't want you.
I was very aware. I tried to be very aware of moments when I thought, that's a Colin Baker moment, or that's a Peter Davidson moment, or Patrick Troughton or John Pertwee, you know what I mean, or Tom Baker moment.
The Doctors, coming soon to Rewind TV.
It's such a different style. I think that's what it is. Like
it is, isn't it? I mean, you've taken a look at this for the very first time, haven't you, Charlotte?
Yes.
What are your thoughts?
Well, you guys had mentioned it, so as soon as you sent it, I was like, oh, this is one of those like documentaries that you said in the past and that you got for certain big anniversaries. And like I said, the thing that really jumped out at me watching it was how just candid everybody was, whether that was the non-production people they had, like Brian Blessed, when he was talking, or when you got J&T or Peter Davidson. And I think that's because I'm so used to now, all the behind-the-scenes stuff when you see it, everything's got this sort of veneer of everything's good, everything's great, everything's
packaged,
happy.
curated.
Yeah. Like
vetted.
even when they do touch upon stuff that isn't the best, it's always got a positive spin. Whereas here,
best thing ever.
You had, like that sort of, but here you basically had Davidson being, I think, very truthful about what he felt about what he felt like working for some of those times, like the fact that it was such a rush at times and things weren't ready and they had some brilliant ideas but didn't actually have the sets that could pull them off. He talked about time flight. And then you got J&T basically admitting that he made a big mistake with how he did the companions. That he actually said, I learned the hard way that it was best to have one companion and a doctor. So it's to hear a creative sort of admit, I got it wrong. Now you never hear that. Or if you hear it, it's from a hell of a lot of backlash until they finally admit to stuff. But to have, like I said, that candidness, but then it was lovely to hear about how much they were protective. That's the other vibe I got. For all like the grumbling, you got that sense of every single, whether it's a past doctor talking or like I said, the producers or the BBC people, they were very aware that this show means a lot and they had to be careful and they had to sort of keep this legacy in the spirit. Like when Hinchcliffe was talking about him and Tom, and I thought that such a brilliant way to put it when he said, we were so excited because we could do what we want as long as it kept the spirit and the tradition.
Yeah.
And I was
It's
like,
very
yes,
relatable, isn't it? And you get the impression that these times sort of bound people together. That not only are they very uncensored, unsanitized, but they're also quite the things that they share are quite intimate. I think, Luke, and this was 6 years isn't perhaps a great length of time, particularly when you bear in mind how long it would eventually remain until the series would come back into full production. But 6 years at the time, it had given it enough distance for the dust to sort of gather. Doctor Who hadn't disappeared without a trace, but it hadn't, to the general public, it hadn't actually been on. There was no reason that anybody had to believe that it would come back. And so people are just really, really relaxed, retrospective, a little melancholy to some degree, but that does allow for a great deal of clarity, I feel.
Yeah, it's quite refreshing to see people be so, not in, a studio set, being PR trained, saying, it was always the plan to do 2 seasons. I've loved it. This is my best time ever. It's quite refreshing. So it's that very much like it's raw and real and gritty, and it's nice to see people talking quite candidly about it as well. So it's refreshing, and you don't see that now as well. Everyone is so afraid to talk about anything now that you don't get it. You don't get that openness of being like, oh yeah, I left because of this or this happened behind the scenes. You just don't get it. So to see this come back into circulation as well, so it's going to be quite an interesting watch. It was very, very interesting to watch. I'm really, really looking forward to it. I didn't watch it in 1995 because I was 1, so I was probably shitting myself. I was a bit busy, so I do apologise, but yeah, very looking forward.
I could make a comment, Luke, but I won't.
David.
To see, it's what. Look, I love seeing, for example, Fraser Hines and Wendy Bradbury, or the late Deborah Watling when she was still with us. I like seeing those people chatting together. But here, for one reason or another, I don't know why that would be, to pair Wendy Bradbury with Sally Faulkner, one of the guest casts from The Invasion, Anthony. This was a novelty too. This wasn't somebody, I don't think Sally had ever really spoken about Doctor Who in between 68 and this. So whether it was sort of by necessity, because they couldn't get Fraser or Deborah, I don't really mind how it came about, but it just gives it a sort of a different, it gives its own identity, this documentary. And you were a part of the production to some degree or another, weren't you? So what kind of insight can you give us into how this was made?
Nothing much really, only in terms of providing the Demons footage for this. And I think even spells my name wrong on the credits, but that's an aside. That's a 40-year battle, that one, 30-year battle. But I do agree with you, Dan. There's some interesting pairings here, isn't there? Because the documentary starts with Brian Blessed and Sean Sutton and Don Henderson talking about William Hartnell. And the thing that struck me, apart from that pairing, was how sensational, the questions which are kind of off screen are leading what's happening in creating a narrative in this documentary. Because whereas we've all said, and I think, Charlotte, you're absolutely right, whereas before it's all kind of nice and cozy and everything's wonderful, this is a kind of opportunity to ask some questions, obviously off camera, that then create the narrative that's created in the documentary. For example, there's John Pertwee there, the question is asked, how did you feel when you left? And, I cried a lot. But then I would have cried after, being in it for 2 hours.
Yeah.
So there's some different extraction that's going on here. If I think Philip Hinchcliffe is asked about the relationship between Louise Jameson and Tom Baker. Yes. And there's that kind of undercurrent, isn't there, Charlotte, of that question being asked. And the Hinchcliffe comes out with I felt an undercurrent around Weng Chiang, but I didn't know quite what that was. I think early on in the documentary, David Maloney says, I was in a production or script meeting for a series 2 episode or series 3 episode, and the then girl bashed her script down up on the table and said, I'm not doing this rubbish. So it was a very interesting, take on Doctor Who that we hadn't necessarily heard before. And I think, Dan, you're absolutely right. The pairings here enable that kind of curiosity about some of the stories that those people tell.
At the time when it was released, I think I had this sort of pre-ordered at HMV, and I went in to pick it up at lunchtime from work, collected it in a brown paper bag, it's that kind of thing. Get it home, get it watched. And I think I probably watched it 2 or 3 times in a 10-day period or something like that, because any new Doctor Who of any kind was, it was like a loaf of bread to a starving man. It was like that. And to see the actors and the actresses looking old, as I say, sounding differently, the ones that I'd heard interviewed before, it was like reconnecting. And now, obviously, in a harsher light, and particularly in the kind of condition that old VHS tapes can be when you go back to them, some of them are wearing better than others. And even the DVD releases of this, and there've been several. The first DVD release was in around 2002, something like that. So it was only 7 years later. None of them have ever sort of remastered it in any way. So I do wonder about the form in which the rewind TV screening will take. Have they gone back to it? Have they recut it, remastered it in any way? I suppose we'll find out if we've got rewind TV. But this was quite controversial at the time to hear John Pertwee suggest that yes, perhaps Doctor Who shouldn't come back. What? It felt so harsh. Of course, he does explain his reasoning, and it's not quite as cold as it first appears. But to hear your hero, somebody who was Doctor Who to a whole generation of people, who was doing very nicely, selling his old stories on VHS, saying, well, it's all pretty well and good, but, it shouldn't come back, and you lot should all move on. It did seem quite harsh at the time. But I think what makes up for that was the content from a figure like J&T. So obviously Philip Hinchcliffe, yes, but he'd been away from Doctor Who for such a long period of time, and he'd left it in rude health. This was the first time that John Nathan Turner had properly spoke, and I'd say there's a good 10 minutes of J&T talk in this where he's very reflective, very self-effacing, frank, and he doesn't sort of throw himself at the mercy of the Doctor Who fans as such, but he comes across as human and fallible and all those things. I think for a little while after the series disappeared, there was a certain amount of animosity that built up again towards J&T as he sort of disappeared off into the distance. Here, he's seen in what looks like a beachfront cafe. You couldn't get more candid than this. And these are decisions that he's talking about, decisions that he made, which don't necessarily cast his judgment in the best of lights, David. And yet he does say, oh, maybe I got it wrong. I didn't enjoy doing that very much. I wanted to leave this job. It's you feel
totally
listening to him talk, and he doesn't ramble. He's carefully chosen words, but it's like the pressure is being gradually released.
It's almost like some sort of therapy for him, I think, this conversation, because he's able to just say, he came, as you say, he came across as very truthful, and he came across as very honest. And I think I used a message to you in a private message saying magnanimous and also very humble. It shows lots of humility to be able to say, when he was in such of a position, because let's not forget, he went through a rough time in the mid-80s with all the campaigns to get rid of him, and all BBC eating itself on open air with people criticizing, and one certain Chris Chibnall criticizing the quality of stories. Hello. That didn't come round to bite him on the arse, did it? Much. But in all that he put up with, what I saw from this conversation was a man who wanted to move on with his career, wanted to go on to further things, but was forced to do the dirty work onto Colin Baker, and then on the promise that would be the last thing he had to do, and then right before he was about to go on holiday, I mean, public organisations are great for this, aren't they? They say, no, you're staying put. So he then had to go through the whole process again when he didn't really want to do it. And for a producer, a showrunner, to stand up and go, yeah, I think I might have got that wrong. Or I might be the man who killed Doctor Who.
And for all the things that this documentary isn't by modern standards, Charlotte, I think that the kind of things that David is sort of circling there, they're very human things. They're things a lot of people have experienced in the workplace, or the situations that people can find themselves in personally. If you're working alongside somebody who you consider a friend, you could be put in a position where you upset that friend. Everybody can relate to that. It's not curated. It's not, oh, it's all marvelous, darlings, and this all went so smoothly. Nobody was at fault, and nobody was a bit salty about anything. It is quite refreshing. And Doctor Who's been back in production for 20 years, and yet we are nowhere near at this point where people involved in 2005, for example, are speaking this openly, because times are completely different now, and maybe a little bit of this would help. I don't know, but watching some of these people, because that's who they're actors or writers or whatever, professionally, but people almost bare their souls. Did it feel uncomfortable in any way, or how did you respond to that?
It didn't make me feel uncomfortable. Like, for example, people know I don't have much love for Colin's Doctor. I never have. And I fully know a lot of that was nothing to do with him. But because of that, and because of, I'm not going to lie, the way Colin was, for example, during Jodie's run, I found him being incredibly insensitive at times to the fan base, being very vitriolic towards the fan base at times. But to see him here, he's like you said, he's so human because he's talking about his experiences, him being basically shafted, which is what he was.
Yeah.
And like that moment the moment which sort of stuck with me was when he was talking about being on the set for when Davidson was regenerating. And he sort of said how it was all manic and I was sort of this deer in headlights, and him going to Peter and asking for advice. And like that sort of is the opposite of the other traits I've seen of him in the last 10 years. So to sort of see all sides of somebody, I think that's what this documentary does. We're so used to now, sort of, whether that's you're an actor or you're a producer or you're a writer, it's like you have one personality trait you can only show.
Yeah.
And you can't deviate from that personality trait. Whereas here, you can see all of them on full show. Regret, happiness, and anger, and I think rightfully so.
Well, I think Colin is reflective but not bitter. I think we get him at a very particular point in his life.
Yeah, I don't think he's bitter, but I think he's got rightfully a bit of anger still in him. Like,
yeah.
I think anybody would still be like that. And like I said, he's not raving, he's not shouting, he's not those things. But you can see he feels like he was sort of given this role and then it got taken away from him, like unfairly. He talks about how like, oh, I had this plan for like 5, 6, 7 years. So any actor, that's gonna sting. Even if you're the most like well-adjusted person, that's going to
And Charlotte, that wasn't something that we first heard of in this either. He'd been very vocal about that during his time in the show, and he never really lived it down. The anger when it came to the doctors, strangely enough, I mean, this is so a nothing burger, I suppose, by modern standards, is that of all people, it was Peter Davison, national treasure, Peter Davison, Mr. Sunday Night TV, who at the time really did upset people in the Doctor Who fandom with several comments made throughout this by referring to his time on the show to one degree or another several times as crap. Fans really didn't like this, and for several years, I mean, obviously it didn't dog his career in any way, but I think it did create a sort of frostiness between him and the fans. As a Davison fan, Davison being my Doctor, and me just picking up the VHS tapes and seeing these stories again, I must admit, this did smart me at the time, Anthony. I was really disappointed that my Doctor would speak this way.
Yeah, agreed. And so again, context is important here. So, if you take this story back sort of 6 years ago to a Panopticon in 1987, where Peter Davison was there. So Panopticon, big event, big event. Peter Davison was on a panel with Janet Fielding and Sarah Sutton. And it followed the kind of same pattern as the documentary, because I was in the audience, that this documentary took, this trait. Doctor Who was rubbish, Doctor Who was boring, Doctor Who was terrible, it was all crap. So this Panopticon panel was the kind of start of that, because at that point, 1987, Davison had been gone for 3 years at that point. So by the time we got to this documentary, there had been that groundswell of all of that opinion about Peter Davison. I think he started to disappear from the convention circuit to an extent. And then he appeared again in this. And then there was this crap and, they're badly written stories. And I did quite like Caves of Androzani, but I didn't like the others. I think Mark Strickson does a really good job at trying to almost rein him back in.
He does, yeah.
Steering the ship away from the rocks, yeah.
But ultimately, Davison keeps going to the fact and looks at the camera and says, but in the end, it was just crap. And so I think Mark Strickson's kind of falls for that conversation and that discourse. And by the end of it, they're both thinking it's pretty crap. So that
I think now that I'm a little older, when I came to rewatch this again, and I hadn't seen this documentary for a long time until the other day. Now, when I see it, I see that Davison is serious when he talks about these things that would have affected his professionalism, Luke. That's the thing. I don't think Davison is bitter about it, but he seems very conscious of the fact that maybe he wasn't able to deliver his best work, and that he had to live with it for 10 plus years. And so there is that. There's a degree of therapy at play here too. But I think now I'm a little bit older, I can see the look on his face. He's got, there's a kind of wry smile on his face. He doesn't necessarily mean it in the way that it was received, certainly by me at the time, as a really young Doctor Who fan who wanted it to come back more than anything else. It's just more in the spirit of being very, very candid, and I suppose taking it that he could speak in a very rounded way and be himself and be relaxed. And you can tell by the dynamic, the warmth between him and Mark, that the whole experience wasn't a nightmare for him. So now I think, God, did I overreact? And compared to the furores that get whipped up around the show now, it is nothing, isn't it?
Yeah, I think context is king at this point, isn't it? I think Anthony mentioned it, and yeah, it's you don't get that candidness anymore. I think the closest we've ever got to it recently is Mr. Eccleston going, "Sack Russell, sack Julie, sack," and that's probably the most we've had.
Good impersonation.
I live in Manchester, lads. Yeah, I think that's the closest we're going to get to a Doctor being candid in this, or the closest we'll get to that. Yeah, it's context is king always in these type of situations, and yeah, you know, people overreact at the slightest thing nowadays as well, and back then as well, when everything is not as well connected and no one's reporting on everything at the same time. As soon as if you have a video or you have an interview with someone, they were like, Doctor Who is crap. It's like, oh, that could be taken out of context, but then you see he's like, oh, well, he's talking about the production values, or he's talking about this, or he's talking about this. It can be misconstrued in a manner of ways, and clearly didn't, because he still has a great affinity and a love for the show, and he speaks so highly about it. Or he's just skint and just wants to go to conventions. It's one of the two, really. He might just think it's all crap, but he's putting money in his pocket, isn't it? So who knows, really?
And whilst I wouldn't describe this documentary as fast, it's not paced particularly quickly. They don't skip over much. I think they do take their time in some respects. They don't hang around and sort of linger on each different matter for too long. And I do wonder how much material was filmed, and how they arrived, David, at the stuff to include. I think most of it is very, very well judged, particularly the Sylvester McCoy and Sophie Aldred material. Yeah. Obviously, they've been, even though again it was 5 years prior to that, they look older. Of course they do, and they're reflective too. But there's no animosity there at all. This is lovely stuff to watch in comparison, and again, there's no anger towards J&T as such. I think there's a little tinge of regret, but it forms part of the picture. I think when you put all these things together, all these pieces together, it's beautifully judged.
Yeah, totally. I love how the story. There was a story in Sylvester and Sophie's bit there about how she arrived as this wonderful on-point actress who knew was completely off book and knew everybody's lines, and then she suddenly found out that owing to Sylvester's sort of bad influence, that she could rely on him digging out the script, and then knew nothing. And used to rely on that. But the one thing I will say about this pairing is that at least Sylvester kept his sunglasses on. Peter Davison, I couldn't watch because he was on, off, on, off, on, off. Peter, either leave them on or leave them off. Don't keep taking them off and putting them back on. And that broke the internet for me, because that drove me round the bend. So I had to not watch his scenes. I just had to listen to them, because it got to the point where I was actually shouting at Peter Davison, not for calling it crap, because they literally had 2 minutes to fit 3 minutes worth of dialogue in, and they had to edit as they go without blocking the scene. Having previously blocked the scene, and the cameraman not knowing what to do, them not knowing what to do, and editing speeches as they went to get to the 10 o'clock cutoff. But
see, that 10 o'clock cutoff, that 10 o'clock cutoff, that 10 o'clock cutoff now is something we hear all the time in successive DVD special features. but it wasn't really that widely known in the 90s. All these things that had gone on, typically in the average BBC day at Television Centre, it was as if they, I don't know whether it was a code that they couldn't talk about these things, but maybe they just didn't want to talk about these things because it was the mundanity of their job. I like the 90s fashions that we get in this as well, Luke. I mean, Sylvester McCoy is wearing a shirt that seems at least 4 sizes too large for him, both on the shoulders and lengthwise. And there are several pairs of sunglasses and things like that. But obviously, that's all part and parcel of looking at any vintage material at all, really. I mean, as somebody who makes documentaries and features and things like that, did you note much about the style of this? I mean, does it look really antiquated compared to what can be done now? Never mind sort of the picture quality, but the way it's put together, the way it's cut.
To a degree, yes. It looks very much a product of its time, but that's to be expected. So it's not going to detract or, hinder anyone coming to watch it. I know we live in a day and age of stopping content, generated content, everyone's swiping away. So it's going to be harder to draw because the films I've been making are a bit slower pace. Some of them they're a bit thing. So it's a lot harder to grab a younger person's attention. This is clearly not meant for the younger audience, and it's going to be of the audience of essentially my age and up now. So I'm early 30s, so I'm still very young, as much as people will want to test that. But yeah, no, it's a product of its time, and in terms of fashion as well, they just look like they stepped out of Northern Quarter in Manchester, because I think my hair's even fallen to a 90s trim going now. So, but yeah, it very much is a product of its time, and storytelling as well. You could do you could probably shoot a better quality film on your phone right now than you could back then, which is wild to see. It's true, but it's wild to see now. But yeah, I think it's very much of its time. It's dated, it's aged, but what's not? It's like some of the best things that has been produced is of that ilk. You look at like Only Fools Notice, classic Doctor Who, Dad's Army, Blackadder. They're all of their time, but they're all like we're not producing quality like that anymore, are we? So who's to say just because it's just a bit older, it might put people off? It's like styles different, styles are changing, editing styles change, but for the better, that's down to the viewer. It's crude, and yet the simplicity. There's a lot to be said for the simplicity. I did wonder at a couple of points watching it, Charlotte. Could it have done with? Does it lack and sorely miss having a front person, someone either, if not necessarily a face, someone who's on camera, sort of right at the start and afterwards, and doing a voiceover throughout, at least a voice of some kind to sort of to guide through, to run through. Because although the clips, it does move chronologically, I think that looking at it now, the documentary does lack a personality in many respects, and that would help it now.
It would help it now, but actually what was nice was you got so many different views because it wasn't so centralized. So you had so many different variety of people. The only bit that I did find a bit odd was when they were talking about Tom, and they were teeing up, like talking about his exit, and then they just said it felt like about 5 minutes worth of the stock footage of Tom with like ominous music in the background.
Yeah, yeah, that was funny.
Is this meant to be like without saying it? We're sort of having a funeral whilst we're watching for Tom's doctor now.
It slowed it right down, didn't it? It got stuck in that.
Yeah, that's the only bit that I felt, okay, that's a bit of an odd choice. Like, either just have a couple of bits of clips of him and then move on to Peter. And then the other thing that I did find a bit odd, that you, like I said, you had that 5 minute weird sort of, it almost felt like an abstract art piece got thrown in. And then you didn't have anybody talk about Peter's doctor. Yeah. You just had Peter talk. And it's like, it would have been nice just to have maybe one person say, oh, what did they like about Peter's doctor or didn't like? Or just sort of how they felt about his time.
Yeah.
That was the only bit that I felt didn't really flow. Everything else, I was like, no, we're going through the doctors, we're having a bit of them talk, or somebody from the BBC who worked with them talk. And then like I said, that's the only time where I felt like, yeah, maybe this could have had just a bit more tightness, or somebody maybe calling, no, we don't need this. That's the only bit for me.
This release was anticipated. It sincerely was. But it was more, I think, largely, because we didn't know until we watched it what people were going to say. So it was the novelty value of that footage, wasn't it, in many respects, Anthony? And it's why they put it sometimes at moments in the show, in the documentary, which didn't always make sense, or which didn't match the things that were being vocalized over the top. Some of that, I feel, does slow it down. But if there was no sort of sensationalist side to this particularly, but I think the closest that we got was when it was brought up to speed, because for anybody who was following the fortunes of Doctor Who as what we would now call an IP, or literally all that we had as any kind of guidance at all was half, maybe a third of the first page of Gallifrey Guardian in Doctor Who magazine around that time. 2 or 3 paragraphs. Somebody's seen a script and they liked it, thumbs up, or that thing we told you that was going to happen, it's not going to happen, as you were, see you next time. It was, and there were morsels of morsels we were living on. And it was almost because we'd read it in Doctor Who magazine, which at the time, I didn't know anybody else who read Doctor Who magazine, so I'd got nobody to talk to about this stuff with. So it was almost, did I really read that? But here we see people talking about it in the case. It's the two Garys here at Doctor Who magazine. Gary Gillett and Gary Russell, wasn't it, who speak about where Doctor Who was at the time, about the possibility of it could be happening here, it could be happening there, it could be a series, could be a TV, and so these are real people. I met neither of them at the time. They were complete strangers to me. These are guys who just worked on the magazine, and here they are speaking in a very matter of fact, very grounded, very sensible way, like you'd have a conversation with 2 guys anywhere. And I think, oh, well, they seem serious about this. Something could be happening after all. I didn't imagine it. Those columns are going somewhere. So I think this was the first time when we were still nearly a year away from the TV movie. So much would happen in that 9 months. But until I saw these guys talking about it, I'd got to the point where I thought, it doesn't really matter what I read in those paragraphs. It's never going to come to anything. And of course, now we know that it did.
I find that really interesting too, because when I watched it for the first time, and I'd forgotten about this bit, but when I rewatched it over the weekend for my homework, I just thought, wow, so they literally are sort of confirming the TV movie on camera. And up until late 95, early 96, we'd heard nothing. And then suddenly, oh yes, it's all happening, and Paul McGann's going to be the Doctor, and blah, blah, blah. My God, where has this come from? So to see them in sort of mid 95 to say, well, apparently Fox are going to do this. There's a script, because and that's
to me, David, they were faceless. They were faceless people. To me, they were faceless people. I had no idea who the writers on Doctor Who magazine were, and for all I knew, it's been going on for so long. They were making it up every month just to guarantee I bought the next one. That's the wall that had built up around the show at the time, I think.
Totally. I mean, because I remember when they announced the Dark Dimension for that ill-fated production, and then the next magazine came in and came out, and it was, it's not happening anymore. Oh, right, okay. Fantastic. So it was getting to the point whereby Gallifrey Guardian I felt was about as trustworthy as the Red Tops tabloids about who was going to be the next Doctor Who, because there was a little bit of are they just making it up? Are they just teasing us to keep us buying the magazine because they are the official Doctor Who magazine, and if any news is going to come out, it's going to come out from them first. And even when the new series with Russell was announced, it was I happened to stumble across, because I was in the Southeast then, a small item on Southeast Today, because their offices were in Tunbridge Wells, and we're at the Doctor Who magazine offices in Tunbridge Wells, because apparently there's going to be a new series. Yes, there is, and it's going to be done by BBC Wales. I just thought, bloody hell,
pigs will fly after all.
Yeah, pigs will fly. And why isn't this massive fanfare? And why isn't there this? Oh, it's just Doctor Who magazine on BBC Southeast Today, sorry. And so there was a lot of, as you say, mystique about what went on at Doctor Who magazine and who these people were and how much in the know are they and what are they telling us or what are they not telling us? So to see them on camera for the first time was quite. It was nice to put a name or a face to the names.
It made it more. It made it more real. It made it seem like it went from a yeah right to a okay maybe. So if the people behind Doctor Who magazine, which I bought every month, were a mystery, then the names on the credits of the doctors from BBV was even more so. I recognise some of them now, and I looked on here for your name, Anthony, and I couldn't see you. And of course, now I see. Is that you? Are you Guy Wayner for the purposes of this?
Guy Wayner.
honestly, so my full name, so this is the story. I don't think Bill Baggs could get Anthony Guy Wayner all across that credit. So he decided to chop the important bit off, which is my first name, Anthony, and decided to put my middle name, Guy. So it fits very nicely in the middle under, who's that, Donald Trevin? Never heard of him. So I appear on those credits, but slightly truncated. So my big moment for this documentary was sadly curtailed. Although I will say, as I say, I've known Bill Baggs for a long time, and I will say that if I don't work for Bill Baggs, I don't promote any of his material, but if you wanted to dig a little bit deeper, and I've got them here, Dan, if you want to see, if you want a compendium to this particular documentary, there are 7, I don't work for Bill Baggs, there are 7 DVDs that are currently available where you can watch all of the uncut versions of those interviews in that documentary.
Oh, wow.
And you can, if you go onto the BBV website, you can stream those. So you don't have to buy the physical copy, you can stream them. And actually, if you wanted to watch one of them, and I know we've already mentioned it, but the John Nathan Turner one, we know we've said it's insightful, but it's incredibly insightful in its uncut edition, its raw unedited version, because I think there's a lot of sadness to John's interview at that particular time. And there's a scene of him walking away. There's a scene of him on Brighton Pier where that documentary, that interview was filmed, not far away from his home. And there's one scene where he's quite solitary, sat on a beach on a deck in a kind of small garden chair. So there's quite a lot to still, if you want to dig deeper into this documentary beyond the edited version, there are, as I say, there are 7 DVDs where you can watch all of it. So you can watch Peter Davison say the word crap for a few more times than on the version.
Did his sunglasses get worse?
If you've not seen this,
don't remember.
If you don't own this on either VHS or DVD, if you've never seen it, never tried to track it down, or never been served a copy by any unlawful platform out there, you've got a chance here to see the Doctor's 30 years of time travel and beyond. It's coming to Rewind TV this weekend, this Saturday. Yes, that's it, on Freeview Channel 81 or Sky Channel 182. There over on Rewind TV. You can follow them on social media too, and see what else they've got. Coming up. They've promised further Doctor Who content. We have got the word on what that's going to be, but for the time being, I've really enjoyed looking back on this. I mean, it has made me feel a little old. I don't mind admitting, Luke. I mean, VHS. My copy of this on tape is still in the loft. I watched it this time on DVD instead, and the quality of this release from Waterfall from 2002 is absolutely shocking. Way worse picture quality than the VHS was. Here's mine. It really is horrendous. So whatever Rewind TV show in a few days' time, it's got to be better. Got to be better than this. I think reach back to your VHS and get all over it on Rewind TV if you're able to receive it. By all means. Interesting to go back to these half-remembered productions that made, I think at times where we were getting so little, they were something. I think Doctor Who fans felt a bit like Pac-Man, chasing after each little white dot when we could, hoping that the line would eventually lead to two fat cherries. Yeah. David's making up his own jokes. Yes, so let us know what you think, as always, about that. Did you own it on VHS? Have you got that awful DVD? Have you seen The Doctors? Or are you going to watch on Rewind TV for the first time? We're going to head over to the live chat and find out what people on YouTube, Rumble, Facebook, and X have to say about that now. Charlotte.
Yes.
Are you glad? Are you glad that you've got to see this? Is it something that you feel you've ticked another box there?
Well, yeah, because you guys talked about it a lot. And like you said, it's always nice to see how sort of Doctor Who media changes and how these documentaries change and the methods. And like you said, and also for me, like J&T, I've sort of heard all the good stories and the bad stories now about that guy. Like I don't have that connection because I wasn't around during his time. So to sort of see him actually speak properly, like have a sit-down interview, to go sort of beyond all the big headlines I've heard about him, that was actually really nice to see. Just like I said, because he was quite calm, he was reflective, he wasn't sort of the big bad J&T figure I've heard about, or some of the more positive I've heard. So that was probably the highlight, if I'm being honest. But it was lovely to watch and to sort of hear everybody talk about it and the chat. So that's been really good fun. And I'll see you guys on Thursday because I do have to go.
Thank you, Charlotte. Anthony, when was the last time you gave any real thought to this documentary? Was it a surprise to you that it had bobbed up again after such a long time?
Absolutely. I mean, when you said, it's going to be shown on Rewind TV, I had no idea. Do you know what? I'd put it to the back of my mind, not for a bad way or a good way. It's just something I'd forgotten about. There was a premiere version of this documentary on the BBC made by Kevin Davies, which is 30 years in the TARDIS. And then there's more of that, more than 30 years in the TARDIS. So that for me is my go-to. But I think this is a curiosity, if you like. I think at the time, as you said, Dan, so clearly it was exciting. Bill Baggs had a bit of a bit between his teeth because he had made those productions like the Air Zone Solution, which you showed a picture of before. But then he went on to do something called Bidding Adieu, which is a making of the TV movie, which was tantalizing. Tantalizing.
Yeah, I love that.
You could see a little bit of the filming of Doctor Who via a camcorder that Sylvester McCoy had taken with him to Canada. So you could see sort of, corridors and alleyways. It was exciting. So I think Bill Baggs was certainly onto something in terms of that series of documentaries that he was making. And I think that particular documentary is exciting insofar as, there's interviews with Paul McGann on that. It was tantalizingly close to seeing new Doctor Who.
Yeah. All important steps on the way back that time, even if it wasn't for very long at all. It is a lot of these productions that came out exclusive to VHS initially are worthy of discussion. We'll definitely be reconnected to talk about more of them in the future. But that's Rewind TV there, Saturday, the 13th of September. Rewind TV, a unique collection of rare and intimate interviews from the longest TV sci-fi series, Doctor Who, there. And to check if you have Freeview and Sky TV and Freely, you can get over there and TiVo it or Sky Plus it or do whatever. If you're out, if you're out for the night, and get back to us and let us know what you think. But Anthony, thank you for your time and your insight there into something that you were involved with, albeit under another name.
Yeah, yes, or a truncated. A very small part of what was going on in Doctor Who worlds in the 90s. So yeah, I look back with fondness at that time. But I'm going to have to shoot as well at the same time as Charlotte. So Dan, thank you very much for letting me reminisce.
Our pleasure. He's off to set his Sky Plus or whatever, aren't you? So you don't miss whatever Rewind TV version gets shown. We'll see you next time, Anthony. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
There is more coming from Rewind TV. They've announced, so on September the 21st at 9 p.m, they're showing Cyberon. This was a direct-to-video, unofficial spin-off drama produced again by BBV. It features the Cyberons. They were a species especially created for BBV, Luke, to resemble a certain popular Doctor Who monster that they couldn't get the rights to.
Yeah, I don't know what it could be. It doesn't look familiar at all.
It's a mystery to me.
Chameleon.
So it could well be.
How are they doing all of this? This is mad. How they're screening all this. This is just mad.
So it could well be that we reconnect to talk about that at some point in the future. But let's go and see in the live chat who have we managed to get their memories from the 90s about this original release. Was this something that you hadn't thought about in years? Has this discussion made you race back to the loft to see if your copy is still playable, or are you going to wait for Rewind TV to show it this coming weekend? Let's go and see what they've got to say in the live chat and take their comments on YouTube, Rumble, Facebook, and X.
Watch Time 40, or I will be paying you a little visit.
Thank you, everybody, for all of these contributions. We've got several great comments here, and people asking, simply suggesting, and musing on wondering whether it could be worth watching. Says Lord Thoth. So he sounds unconvinced by that.
Very much so.
I would say it is. I would say it is. Again, Luke is right. A product of its time, but still, there's a lot of value in context.
Yeah, as long as you can handle somebody taking off their sunglasses and putting them back on repeatedly, then very much so. Yeah.
What's your tolerance like to people's accessory habits they may or may not have? Funky here says he may still have the VHS somewhere, but got the DVD for about £3 a few years ago. Yeah, it's best to pay as little as you possibly can for that. It's terrible. Cheryl is there watching on YouTube too. Hi, Cheryl. She says, wow, look how young they all are.
Yeah, that's very much so. I think Peter Davison's outfit is the most 90s out of all of them on it.
He's just missing the bucket hat, isn't he? For
he is,
90s. Yeah. Funky also says that Davison broke the internet before it was readily available. With this interview, he kind of did. Yeah, people were salty, by popular expressions. Salty. Friador says the J&T interview is a lot better than his Mythmakers. Well, the Mythmakers release, which I do recommend, was only shot about a year after he'd left the job. In fact, he may have still have been working for the BBC when he shot that, because he did remain in that position for a good year or maybe even two after the last Doctor Who material was actually made. So I think, that's why the passage of time here, he's able to speak a bit more. I think that both put together actually make for the ultimate sort of JNT 90s extravaganza. Garbage also hopes they've upscaled it, if possible. I mean, how much can you do to material of that vintage, Luke? When you're shot pretty much like the equivalent of a corporate video would have been back then for the average business. Is there anything you can do with that kind of material?
I mean, there are tools available to upscale and to interlace and go through it, but it's a lot of time and a lot of money and a lot of effort. So it very much is dependent on how much value rewind seeing it in terms of cleaning it up. But yes, there is ways around it to clean it up, not to make it like look incredible, but there's ways and means of doing something just to sharpen the image, just clear it. The sound would probably be one of the easiest ones, to be fair. Sound is actually a lot easier to clean up than visuals. So yeah, there's tips and tricks, but it all depends down to how much rewinds the value of this, to be honest. So we will see when it airs. That's all I can say.
If they're using it as a testing ground for other such material, whether it comes from Doctor Who or any other such place, material that was never made for broadcast TV could have some sort of value to Rewind TV, because there's a lot of cheap and cheerful stuff on there, and they do their own content as well. So who knows? Maybe Friador says you get Don Henderson talking about the show too, the villain of course, what everybody knows is the best of the classic stories, Delta and the Bannermen. I love seeing Don Henderson. I mean, he doesn't say much, does he? Bless him.
No, he
nice
doesn't. He doesn't. Whenever he speaks, he adds something positive. So I don't want to spoil stuff, but he always says something positive about Doctor Who, which adds value to it. So it's lovely to see him, even if he hasn't got his chip packet hat on, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I do. Stephen Braddock's really looking forward to seeing the colour footage from The Smugglers and The Abominable Snowman. Yeah, it's nice. It's strange. I remember even now it's strange to see that stuff.
Yeah.
Because of, I mean, obviously this material still doesn't exist. We can't own that story. But I think we're more used to stuff being released from the archives now across movie and TV history. Through DVD and Blu-ray special features. But even so, to see the fashions, to see the way that TV was made, to see them sort of kneeling down, Luke, and going for their lunch and things like that, and smoking a fag. It does look like, I wouldn't say it doesn't look professional, but it looks
yeah, it looks handy. Yeah, it's very. It's raw and real, isn't it? I think having a presenter for this type of thing wouldn't really have worked to a degree, because he would have had someone try to force a narrative or do this or do that. They can do that through the edit, realistically. But this one is a lot more. You were speaking to the person. They're not putting up a front. You're not having a person there try to guide you and try and make the documentary about them. It's all about the actors. It's all about the cast and the crew and stuff. So I can see why they didn't. I can see why they didn't have a presenter.
Dalek Lives Matter is watching on YouTube and reminds us that Brian Blessed is a national treasure, as if we needed reminding. Blessed himself reminds us every opportunity that he gets. We wouldn't change Brian Blessed for the world. And what else have we got here? BBV did a very nice array of audio in the late 90s too, before Big Finish arrived. So yeah, Anthony was sort of showing you there some of their interview content, lots of audio drama, lots of video drama too, and BBV still very much still a thing. Philip Roy is in the live chat too.
Isn't there one of like Colin Baker, like topless with, is this Sophie Aldred or something?
Yeah, there are some sex scenes involving Colin Baker.
More Than a Messiah. That was the second of the BBV dramas. It's better than it sounds, I promise. We loved this stuff when it came out. Again, it was food to a starving man. It was, each one was greatly anticipated right the way from Summoned by Shadows. That was the first one. There, all the way through. They made about 6 in the end, and all of them are worth revisiting, and maybe we will at some point in the future. Philip Roy is in the live chat. Doctor Who himself, he's obviously taken a break from fighting off the Scorpion to say that the one thing we can say about the 30 years of book cover is that all of the actors playing the Doctor eat their ready break. I'm too young to know what he's talking about, David. I don't know what he's on about.
Absolutely, I do. It's the old Ready Break TV advert. When the kid has their Ready Break in the morning, they've got a nice orange glow around the outline of the body. That's to show that they have had their Ready Break, and it will keep them warm throughout the cold winter days.
Stephen O'Neill reminds us that Don Henderson died just 2 years after this documentary was released. Was it really that soon? Oh, that's sad. That is sad. I always loved him. I thought he was a great actor.
He was a great villain too.
Don couldn't speak properly because of throat cancer. I know that his health was he had health problems, didn't he? Evidently, yeah. Just a wonderful actor. Bullman on ITV in the 80s. Yeah, great stuff. What else have we got here? And now we've really started something. People talking about which was their favourite or not so favourite BBV video. I think that could be a conversation for another time. I'll have to definitely raid the loft for some of that stuff. The topless Colin Baker and Sophie Aldred action there, and get the old VHSs down and see what is still playable and not covered in mould. That tends to be how it works. Okay, yes. So let us know again in the comments, what do you think? Had it been years since you thought about the Doctors from BBV, originally on Mastervision VHS video? And have you set aside an hour to catch up with this on Rewind TV this coming weekend? If you are able to receive it, let us know in the comments. We are all ears.
Oh my God. Stephen and Vicky, Peter Purves and Maureen O'Brien. Yeah, no. At one point I thought about putting him in this episode. Did you? At one point there was a giant cow in UNHQ. One of the creatures like the Vlinks. Oh yeah. It was going to be a big cow sitting at a desk. That's right. Then it turned out to be Stephen in disguise. And the things that go through my head, I know. The things you don't ever see that like, he was going to go wham like that. I'm here to fight the toy maker. And it would have been much better.
A reminder there that nobody in the 21st century ever has any stupid ideas about making Doctor Who, do they? That's one of Charlotte's favourite clips. I'm sure she will be mortified to have missed it, but we're off again, off to the pub, the caff, more likely to get 40 winks, go off to bed, I think. But yeah, not before we give you the opportunity to come and say hello. As always, they're through our social medias. That's Instagram and X at Type40 Doctor Who. That's where you can find us. Tell us what you think of the show, by all means, and about the Doctors, about Rewind TV, about vintage material like that, straight to VHS, and all of the other topics that we've talked about on this edition of the show. You can steam into to the Type40 Facebook group and start your own conversation completely, or get involved, embroiled in one of the many discussions and fights that are going on the wall right there and right now. And if that wasn't enough, you can leave us a message, a prediction, a request, or any kind of review or referral at SpeakPipe as ever. The link is in the video description. Isn't talking about Doctor Who thirsty work? I think the pubs are closing any minute now, David. So whose idea was doing this at this time of night? I don't know.
You can still make last orders if you're quick.
Yes, thank you guys for another roaring conversation, a real blast back through the TV past. And yeah, Doctor Who may not be on TV anytime soon, but yeah, places like Rewind TV kind of doing their bit here and there. How many people are going to watch it? Of course, heaven knows. But it's plenty. I think it's good ground to talk about, and it's great to dive into these little corners of the Whoniverse, of Doctor Who fandom, and to relive or to look at this stuff for the first time if you've never seen it before. There are nuggets like this stretched throughout the history of Doctor Who, Luke, I think, and I think whatever age you are, whether you're around at the time or not, there's always something that you've probably read or seen or heard that myself or David or Charlotte may not have done. I think there's more going on than we can all sort of take in at any given time. Like we said at the top of the show, like there's more books than I can certainly read. And so if I can ask one of you guys, well, is that audio worth getting, worth buying? Is that documentary from whenever worth catching? Between us, we can come up with some sort of good shortlist, can't we?
Oh yeah, massively. Giancarlo War Doctor Audios, He Who Fights With Monsters. That's the one. Incredible Doctor Who story. Absolutely incredible.
Absolutely worth it, definitely. I would say there are Doctor Who fans aplenty over at Rewind TV. I think people who are into vintage material do tend to be, more often than not, Doctor Who fans. So keep your eye on the schedules there, but don't let it distract you from the Type 40 live schedule. You can relive some of our live streams there, the good, the bad, and the ugly of Type 40 Live. So there's our event shows, for example, celebrating a time, a story, a person, or an occasion from Doctor Who's long distinguished history. There's our regular early editions catching up with the news, and those showcases for things such as the brand new Blu-ray releases when they're on the way. So whatever you're into, whatever kind of Doctor Who is your bag, you can find something in those playlists. Go and check them out and have fun. Even Jodie Whittaker fans, maybe or maybe not, but you can get your fill. As it turns out, this week Jodie Whittaker is going to be back. I'm afraid Jodie Whittaker is giving an exhaustive interview, her biggest ever Doctor Who interview here in print to Doctor Who magazine. That's coming out later this week. What's she going to say? I suppose we'll steel ourselves to read that for ourselves.
$7.99.
Find out. $7.99 is the regular cover price for that now for the physical copy. David, it's extortionate.
Yeah.
It is pretty steep, isn't it?
It is. It is. It is. The podcast of you, Ken Deep, if anybody in the chat hasn't watched it yet, is an absolute must listen. I listened to it over the weekend and it was absolutely brilliant. So can I just pass on my congratulations? Thank
you, David.
Brilliant listen. Brilliant listen.
I said this to Ken at the time, and I might have said it on the show before, but there are several sort of key conversations and episodes of that podcast, which we've been making now for the best part of 8 years. There are several that are kind of either game changers or highlights for my time doing it, or simply conversations I've had whereby you feel like you really uncover who someone is and what makes them them. And when the conversation involves somebody as generous as Ken, someone as steeped in Doctor Who fandom history as Ken, it was a great privilege to spend that couple of hours with him. So I'm glad people are finding it, and I think it was out about 6 or 7 weeks ago now. But thank you. I'll let him know. Get on that, by all means. More podcasts coming. Check the feeds, type40.podbean.com and the podcatcher of your choice, and be sure to be back here for more Type 40 Live. Of course, our particular brand of news, reviews, previews, discussions, nostalgia, and more are coming up. The next one in just a couple of days' time. As ever, my thanks to Anthony Weiner and Charlotte Shields for making up the panel, for staying up that little bit later just to chat to the likes of us and to David Milling. How's your voice? How's your voice being up, mate?
It's on its way out, so I'm going to obviously pack it overnight and hope I don't sound like Barry White again when I wake up. Oh, baby.
Retire to the pavilion. You've done more than your fair share. Thank you so much for coming on, mate. Despite not feeling 100%, it's been good to chat about this and that with you. And Luke Walters, to the head hooligan. Thank you too, mate. Great to catch up. And everybody in the live chat there with the comments, we've got some really great ones. And we've got going down certain rabbit holes as always. Yes to everything, says Ezra Goldstein. Yes to everything. I don't know what. In fact, he said it several times. I don't know what that could be, but there we are. Make it stop, says Richard Brooks. Okay, we can take a hint.
Sorry, very quickly. If you're into your Doctor Who, have a look at the Cinescope YouTube channel tomorrow between 5 and 7 p.m. Just saying. Just throwing that out there. Just throwing that out there. Have a little look.
That's very teasing, isn't it? Make sure you subscribe to Cinescope, and you're on social media with that too, aren't you, Luke? There's a Cinescope socials. People know where to find them.
Yeah, I'm always online. It's quite sad, actually. One day I will get a life.
It's sad.
It's constantly there. But yes, you can find us all on Hooligans. The entire series of Hooligans are there for you to watch. in episodic films, or as the feature length version, which is Tales of the TARDIS. I made a Time Machine. I made War of the Worlds, comedy sketches, and then we're launching a little something tomorrow, a little something special. So if you're into your Doctor Who, have a look at the Cinescope YouTube channel between 5 and 7 p.m. I haven't decided the time yet. That's why I'm being quite vague with it. So.
Oh, so it's not a limited period. So it's just a publishing time. Is that right?
It's a publishing time. Yeah, Dan has seen it. Dan has watched
I
it.
thought I've seen it. Why is he talking in a 2-hour block? I get it now. We've all been there. Best of luck with that. Make sure you're over to Cinescope to see whatever it is that Luke's talking about. That's dropping tomorrow, is it?
At some point, yeah. But when I decide, I finish work at 5:30, so 5 o'clock might be a bit too early. So let's say 6:30. Who knows?
We shall see, and we hope to drag you both back in the not too distant future to talk more Doctor Who. We're not quite sure where the rest of the year is going to go, but it's going to be fun finding out. I think between us, we'll definitely find something to talk about, to enthuse about, to rant, or to rave about here at Type 40 Live, where, as always, all opinions are welcome. We're going to run around here for a couple of days whilst we prepare the next show. That's coming up in a couple of days' time. Our next event, we're not going to tell you what that is just yet. If you follow the socials, you'll get the first word. That's the Big Who from 8 p.m. this coming Thursday. But we always have the time if you have the space here at Type 40 Live. We'll see you then. Until then, take care. Bye-bye, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.